All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Mike, can you just confirm you can still see my screen? Okay.
Yeah, can see you, can hear you.
Perfect, thank you. All right, well, here we go. Welcome to the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group, and also welcome to the last week of spring. There are exactly 7 days left of spring, actually 8 days. Next Thursday is the first day of, I'm not spring, summer. Next Thursday is the first day of fall. So anyway, enjoy that last week of summer. All right, so here's our agenda for today. We're gonna have our welcome and general business, which is what we're doing right now. We'll have some member announcements as well. If you have any member announcements that you'd like to announce during at the right time, start thinking about it right now. You can, if you have a job opening, if you're looking for help with anything NetSuite related, you can share that information with the group. After that, we're going to hear from our meeting sponsor, Salto, today. And then the main presentation is Customizing NetSuite, and that will be presented by me, Cory Anderson. And then we'll hear from Margie Cominos. Our tips and tricks today is about custom segments. And then after that, our remaining time, we will have our open forum where you have a chance to ask any question to the group, and we might be able to help you find information. If you're not muted, please go ahead and mute yourself. Let's see. Yep, we should be good.
I'm chasing the unmuted, seriously.
Okay, thanks, Mike. All right, so we'll dig in here. So first of all, I'm going to talk about membership to our user group. Membership is free. All you have to do is register at rmnsug.org. Once you register, you get a notification of upcoming meetings and events. You also get access to our LinkedIn forum. And then I thought I set this to mute upon entry.
Yeah, I did too. It keeps, yeah.
Okay, no problem. Anyway, membership also gives you access to our LinkedIn forum. And then we also offer CPE credits for all of these meetings. And there are 2 CPE credits available today. I will announce the CPE credit information later. It has the CPE part of the meeting has not started yet. If you are not a member, please go ahead and sign up today. Our LinkedIn user group forum, the purpose of that forum is to support fellow members with questions and answers, follow-up Q&A from these meetings. We also use that for our announcements. So when there's presentations, notes, anything that we have to communicate, we're going to post that there. And then it also gives you the ability to post job openings if you're looking for somebody to bring onto your team. And then also if you are looking for work, anything like that, you can post all of that information there. So where to find us? We have a website. It is rmnsug.org. It's Rocky Mountain NetSuite User Group.org. We post all of our information there. We also have a YouTube channel. You can go to YouTube and search RMNSUG. That's where we host all of our meeting recordings. And then we have the LinkedIn user group. You can search for RMNSUG in LinkedIn, or if you want to go direct, there's the link right there. Also, we record all of our meetings. We post all of our meetings at rmnsug.org/posts. Anything that we've done in the past, and we have, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years worth of meetings now. And so we've done a whole host of topics. So if you're looking for information on a specific NetSuite topic, we've probably done a meeting on it in the past. And if you do search and you can't find that we've done a meeting, then please recommend a topic for us. We're always looking for new topics to present on. So kind of a cool announcement, save the date. We are going to have our very first user group happy hour. We are planning this for Thursday, October 27th. That'll be about a month and a half from now or so. This time we're going to do it at the Grange Hall. And the Grange Hall is in Greenwood Village, which is near Arapahoe and I-25. So kind of the south end of Denver. What we're going to do, we're going to provide food. We're going to provide adult beverages. And it's an opportunity for networking and to see people that we haven't seen in a long time. We used to do these meetings in person, but COVID kind of changed all of that for us, but we still want to be able to see everybody in person and network and catch up and all of that. So that's why we're going to start doing these happy hours. So expect more information to be coming on that very soon. Also, for our future happy hours, we will be looking for we will be looking for meeting spaces, and so we don't want to always do them in the same area of town. So we'd like to do something in North Denver area, east, west. Like if you have any good ideas of a good place to host a happy hour, we're typically expecting, I don't know, it depends on all of you, but maybe 50 to 100 people to attend. So we're looking for spaces that can facilitate that type of an event. So next thing is Suite World. So I will be attending Suite World this year on behalf of the user group, and I'll be also presenting my impressions and thoughts and things that were really interesting from Suite World at our November meeting. If you're going to be at Suite World, there are birds of a feather tables at the lunchtime. And so if you look at the tables, they'll have a little sign on them, and you look for Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group. I'll be there for our lunch times. I don't know the exact day. I think they do it on Wednesday for the birds of the feather meetings or meetups. But anyway, if you're going to attend Suite World, be looking for me. I'll be walking around, and I'll be at that area during the birds of a feather lunch. So member announcements. This is the time for you to make an announcement if you'd like. If you have any if you have any job postings, if you're looking for work, anything that you need that's NetSuite related, you can either unmute yourself and announce it, or you can post it in the chat window and I'll read it. So I'm just going to wait a couple minutes if anybody wants to make an announcement.
I will. Hi, my name is Donna Hall, and I just got my foundation certification, and I am open for employment, and I'm working hard my goal is to be a senior consultant. So anybody has any contacts, that would be wonderful. But for now, I'm just learning as much as I can, where I can, as I can.
Donna, this is Peggy Egleth with RSM. Would you please forward me your information? I will post my email in the chat.
Thank you very much. And you said you're Peggy?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Peggy. Thank
Hi.
you.
And I'm a NetSuite manager at RSM's Denver office.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. And also you can post this information in our LinkedIn forum as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else
have to post that we're looking for NetSuite consultants.
Okay.
Okay, awesome.
All right. Thanks, Peggy and Donna. Anybody else? Any other announcements?
Yeah, this is David Behrens. I am new to the group and actually based out of California, but hopefully this is relevant to someone. We are looking for a NetSuite administrator. The company is Trimark Associates. We do metering and control systems for grid scale power, specifically solar. And I can explain more of what that job description is or send it along, but we have a need to fill, excuse me, in-house.
Excellent. Thank you, David. If you have a job description, feel free to post it in the chat window and also on our LinkedIn forum.
Perfect. Thanks, Cory. Will do.
Yep. All right. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. All right. If you think of something later, please feel free to post it in the chat window. The chat window is going to fill up though, probably throughout the day. So the LinkedIn forum is a great place to post those things later on as well. All right, let's move on. So I'm going to introduce the board of the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group. So first of all, I'm Cory Anderson. I'm the president of the user group. I'm an independent NetSuite and Siligo consultant. Then we have our sponsorship and member chair, Margie Cominos of PlantScan Corporation. Then we also have our communications chair, Mike Kackline of Vertifor, our speaker chair, Peggy Evleth of RSM US, who we just heard from, and our treasurer, Dana Larson of Dana Larson Consulting. So you'll see all of us present at the user groups, these meetings at some point in time. And we've done many presentations in the past. And so if you check out our posts on our website, you'll probably hear from one of us. And we also work tirelessly in the background to run this user group and to try and bring you good content and great NetSuite knowledge and networking opportunities. So thank you to the board for everything that you do for this user group. Evaluations will be sent out later today. Please take a few moments to let us know how we're doing. We do read and act on the feedback from the evaluations. There's an open comments section. So if you have, like I said, if you have any ideas for a happy hour meeting space, you can post it in those in the evaluation. And then any topics that you want to hear about in the future, please use that evaluation to give feedback on the topics that we present on in the future. So as a reminder, please use the same email to RSVP as the email that you received the meeting invite. We try to maintain individual member records. So as a user group, we have a production NetSuite instance that we use to run the user group. And so if we have duplicate customers, you may know it's challenging to keep customers from being duplicated. So if you use different email addresses to register in multiple times, then you get duplicate customer records. So anyway, if you get multiple emails from us, it's because you've registered with different email addresses over time. You can email rsvp@rmnsug.org, and we'll have those extra email addresses inactivated and kind of condense you to one customer or member record in our system. Thank you.
Can I add a comment on that, since I'm also the membership chair?
Yep.
A lot of people are moving companies these days. And so therefore I might have a name with 6 entries, 6 different email addresses, partially because they're from older companies. So if you leave a company and go to a new company, if you can also email that rsvp@rmnsug.org, please do so. Let me know, and then I can just merge your records. And I know you won't be getting the email at the old company, but sometimes they don't alert us to let us know it's no longer a valid email. So thank you.
Thanks, Margie. All right, so our meeting sponsorship, membership to our user group is free. However, the cost of the meetings is supported by 2 levels of sponsorship. We offer Suite App and consulting sponsors. Suite App sponsors must be available through suiteapp.com, and consulting sponsors must either offer NetSuite consulting services and have NetSuite certified consultants on staff. You can sign up for either sponsorship type at rmnsug.org/sponsorship. So here's our upcoming meetings. Our last meeting of this year is going to be on supply chain. Plus, as I mentioned, we'll also have a Suite World update. And then in January of next year, we're going to come back to our reporting and saved searches topic. We don't have specifics around that one yet, but we almost always do some type of reporting, whether it's saved searches or financial reporting or Suite Analytics, workbooks, things like that. So that'll be coming back around in January. And then in March, it's going to be a new topic for us, a procure to pay meeting. And so that should be a good one. I don't think we've done anything like that before in the past. We're always looking for presenters. So if you are an expert in any of these, any of the topics that we're talking about, please email info@rmnsug.org if you or somebody in your company is interested in presenting at one of our meetings. CPE credits. So there are 2 CPE credits for today's meeting. Certificates will be issued within 15 days after training. For problems with CPE, you can email info@rmnsug.org. CPE credits are sponsored by Eide Bailly. So this is Eide Bailly CPE compliance. To receive CPE for attending today's session, you must sign in and out of the session using code words. The facilitator will provide the first code word at the start of the session, that's me, and then provide you a checkout code word once the session is complete. And the session is the main content, which will start at 9 o'clock this morning. Logging in with your computer, you click the link that was provided to you in the email. If you registered before Monday night at 11:30, you should receive that email with the check-in link. And then you fill out the information and enter the check-in and check-out code words. Once I post the check-in keyword, I will also put the check-in link in the chat window in case anybody missed that. Today we have a sponsor raffle, and we'll hear from our sponsor in just a moment, but you can enter for a chance to win an Apple Watch today. There's the URL. I don't expect you to type that in. We're going to post that in the chat window as well. And so with that, I'd like to say thank you to our Suite App sponsor, Salto. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Putman from Salto to tell us a little bit about what Salto does.
Hey, thanks, Cory. Let me share my screen here and we'll get kicked off. So as again, thank you everyone for coming. We're happy to sponsor. I'd like to talk a little bit about Salto and about our methodology. And because I'm ambitious, I'm going to try and squeeze that and a very quick demo in 10 minutes because I am a big fan of show, don't tell. So we'll see if we can get that done. As was said, I am Dan Putman. I'm a customer engineer with Salto. And so that means I'm technically oriented, do demos, answer technical questions, do onboarding. So after this and after the user group, if you want to reach out to us, it's likely you'll see me or another of my customer engineers showing you deeper functionality for Salto. So let's keep going along. You know, we all live in this modern environment where SaaS applications, I mean, you're all familiar with NetSuite, are running the business. They're not just supplemental, they're core and they're often linked together. So with more and more of business critical functionality and support being run off these systems, it requires more diligence, right? And stronger systems to support managing NetSuite and Salesforce and all these modern applications. So that comes along with a lot of challenges, like getting the visibility to know what's implemented, who's changed things, how do I make sure that as I'm updating the system, I don't break production, or at least understand how I'm going to impact production. How can I work with my team? If I break something, how do I get back? All of these things are challenges that often aren't brought in at the ground level within the SaaS applications. So what we've really been trying to do is take the best in class practices from the development world, from IT. So you probably heard things like DevOps and whatnot that have been honed over 20, 30 years of headaches and pain. So whereas it used to be very manual and error prone, and you'd have different people, it was difficult to collaborate between teams. They've solved that with a lot of automated processes and tools, CI tools you might have heard of, to create better release cycles, lower errors, lower cost of delivery of moving between your dev environments, your sandboxes, and your production environments. So why not just take those same concepts and try and move them into the business world, into the SaaS world? So here's where you get the concept of business engineering. So can we take those, keep the process, and just change what we're operating on? We're not operating on the raw software code, but instead business configurations, often mixed with things like suite scripts or Apex code if you're working in Salesforce, things like that. So what you have now is a clear textual representation of what you're making, right? We can version it, we can deploy it. Everyone can look at it and understand what changes are going to be made within a given package. You'll also be able to leverage multiple sandboxes easily. You'll have rollback with revert and deploy, things like that. So that's the goal, but none of what I've talked about is NetSuite specific, right? It's very high level. And we aim to keep it that way because we want to be able to work across multiple applications having the same type of process. So we work with Salesforce, NetSuite, Mercado. I mean, you can read the screen, but we're constantly growing this. So if you have integrations between these platforms, you can also leverage that and see and get visibility into how the platforms are working together. Case in point, where next adapter will likely be Okta. A lot of teams are using Okta for their SSO, often in combination with these other applications. So we're bringing that into the platform. All that said, what could we do today? So today, we actually have a free tier. If you wanted to go to Salto and hop in, you can attach it in one of your instances, be it a sandbox or production, pull the data and start to explore it and look at the relationships between objects in ways that you can't do in NetSuite today. But I can also, let's see how much time I got. Cory, I think I have a few minutes. I'd love to show Salto and show how quickly we can deploy something from a sandbox to production. About 5 minutes. Does that sound right, Cory?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay, terrific. So let me switch over to Salto real quick. I can't, oh, I gotta actually get out of this. Let me do that and go there. Can you see Salto now?
Yes.
Terrific. Okay. So I have already set up a deployment. You'll see I have a demo 1 and a demo 2 environment. And I'm in the Explore tab, which is where you'd go to look through your objects, but I'm gonna hop over to deploy. And you see I've set up a deployment here for a workflow. So I have a custom workflow that I have made a few changes to. So let's dive into some of these changes. You can see at a glance, I pulled all that information from the NetSuite APIs, and I've made visible exactly what's changing here. In this case, I'm changing the field type and the value in this field for this action, as well as I've changed the save search for a different action. So I have both these changes that I'd like to take up into my production environment. So I've got visibility into it. And if I wanted to bring other things, you can see I've got visual indications of what would happen for these other workflows. I have pluses for brand new additions, as well as minuses for removals of various things. And you'll notice this is the bane of all existence, dependencies, and that possibility that I could forget them. Hopping from demo to demo, getting kids to school happens often. So Salto covers it in a couple of ways. So I have the related elements tab, which will show me those dependencies. In this case, the new save search that I created and added to that workflow. And if I refresh, I'm asking Salto, would keep looking down that tree. Do I have second, third, fourth level dependencies that I need to bring as well? I don't now. So I've got 4 elements, my workflow, my safe search, that I can take to the next level. So let's go ahead and preview. And this is the second level of protection where Salto is now looking at those graph dependencies and relationships to make sure I don't have any conflicts or I missed any dependencies, didn't click on something. And it will notify me of that in the next screen and give me a clear indication of what the error was here in skipped, as well as what I should probably do to fix it. But because I don't, I've got 4 planned objects here going up. This is just, we even give a little manual warnings here sometimes for save searches, essentially saying, just make sure you didn't, I believe, my mouse over. Oh, no, won't worry about that. Mouse down here. We'll hop through this. The saying, make sure that you don't have a conflict in the next environment around this ID, because a lot of these auto-generated IDs sometimes come into conflict when I push them up. So we add little helpful tips like that as well. But let me deploy this. And right now we're going to hit the SDF API, as well as we have a custom suite app to add some additional functionality you don't get in SDF. We'll push those objects up into production. We'll verify that they got there appropriately. And then afterwards, I'll be able to push a button to create an automatically staged version for Git that I can then attach to a ticket if need be. So case in point, I usually use Jira. I can attach that Jira ticket, my change request, to the actual work I've done in deploying this. Great. So I have a successful deployment. And I won't do it on this call because I'm out of time, but I could then take these changes, attach them to my ticket, and save that version for reversion, so I can do a revert later, or just for a paper trail. So thank you so much. I think I squeezed it in, and I'll kick it back to Cory. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. We appreciate you sponsoring the user group, and it looks like a really great tool that you have. If you didn't catch it, the raffle link is in the chat window for Salto. And I did put in also the Sweet World discount code. It's the same as their early bird price, but that's in the chat window as well, in case you wanted to do a last minute registration for Sweet World. All right, I'm going to bring my screen back up now. And the first thing I'm going to do is post our CPE check-in code. Let me share this. So there's our CPE check-in code. I'm also going to put this in the chat window, the link to log in. I'm going to leave that up here for just a moment, so everybody that is interested in CPE credits can check in. Code is strawberry. Okay, CPE check-in. The link is right above. I just posted it right above, Peggy. I'll post it again. I'll title it. Okay, there it is. All right. So give me just a moment. I'm going to bring up my other presentation. And I'll share my screen. Okay, so again, welcome everybody. I'm Cory Anderson of Cory Anderson Consulting, an independent NetSuite and Celigo consultant. A little bit about me: I've been working with NetSuite for almost 10 years now. I started as I was the VP of operations for a small internet retailer who we bought NetSuite and we implemented it, and I became the power user, the system administrator, and I did that for many years. And then I went into NetSuite consulting about 3 years ago, and branched out on my own earlier this year. So a couple of things that I want to mention as far as NetSuite knowledge and customizing NetSuite. So there's a lot of customization options that I'm going to cover today, but some that I definitely won't have time to cover. My goal is to show you what some of the possibilities are. What you can do with the customization features is only limited by your imagination and creativity. On the left-hand side here, I have some information. We have SAID. So I'm going to reference an SAID and then a number at different points throughout the presentation. And let me get my little laser pointer here. So in SAID, that's Suite Answers Article ID. So what you would do is you would take that ID number, you would go to Suite Answers, and you just search for that ID number, and it'll bring up the article that I'm referencing that gives you more information about the topic of whatever I'm talking about at the specific time. If you can today, I recommend that you follow along in your NetSuite account. As I'm doing some of the demonstrations, I am a visual learner, so for me, it's very beneficial to go in and do things as I'm learning about them. And just to note, an administrator role is required to do most, if not all, of the customizations that we're going to talk about today. One other thing that I want to mention is that I am of the belief that a good NetSuite administrator or power user or consultant isn't somebody who has every feature and function of NetSuite memorized. but rather knows where to find that information quickly, but has a very strong understanding of the underlying structure of NetSuite, the database structure, and how different record types are related to each other and how things are connected. I think it's way more important to have that deep foundational knowledge and then be able to go to Suite Answers, for example, and find the information that you need quickly. Suite Answers it's a little bit of an art form, finding the answer sometimes. You may type in something like save search formulas, and you'll get a whole bunch of different options. And going through those options and finding the answer to your question it takes a little bit of time and effort, but you get better at it over time. One more time, I can't post it later on, but the CPE check-in code is strawberry. That's the last time I can say it, and then we'll do the checkout code later on. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on. So today, these are the topics that I'm going to cover. First of all, I'm going to cover custom fields. Then we'll talk about custom lists very briefly. It's an easy topic. And then we'll cover custom forms and then custom records. There are, and as I mentioned before, there's a bunch of things that you can do in NetSuite that we're not going to cover today, but my hope is to give you a solid foundation of what you can do with customizations, and then you can let your imagination and creativity help you find creative solutions to your specific business challenges. So the first thing we're going to talk about is custom fields. I believe that custom fields is a great foundation for understanding customization, because most of the things that you're going to do as far as customization revolve around custom fields. And so once you understand custom fields and the options there, then you can apply these fields to the other topics that we'll discuss today. So here's my first Suite Answers ID. So SAID 10092. That's going to take you to an article about custom fields. And so as I said, it's not important that you memorize the information today. It's important that you know where to find it when you need specific details about a specific field or topic. So first of all, we'll cover the types of custom fields. First of all, we have entity fields. Entity fields are used to add fields to entity records. Entity records include any relationship or employee records, such as customers, vendors, employees, contacts, partners, or groups. So entity fields. Next one is item fields. Item fields apply to records that including accounting and website item records, such as inventory, non-inventory, service items, other charge, group, kit and package items, and also assembly/bill of material items. So item fields are fields that apply to items. Next one is transaction body fields. So transaction body fields are used to add fields to the body or header of a transaction. These records include a purchase, sale, journal entry, expense report records. Examples are sales orders, invoices, purchase orders, opportunities, web store transactions, or item receipts. And there are many other transaction types in NetSuite. This is just a sample of some of them. Then we have transaction line fields. And so transaction line fields are used to add columns to the transaction records. So most of the time, transactions are going to have a sublist of items. And those items the transaction line fields are where we can add custom fields to the item line, like on a sales order or an invoice or an item fulfillment, for example. So these fields display in the line item columns of transaction records and include fields such as expense items, purchase items, sales items, store items, or opportunity items. These are also known as custom columns. And so when you're looking at transaction line fields, if you look at the internal ID of a transaction line field, it'll say CUST, COL. That's short for custom column. And so those are the same thing. Next one is CRM fields. CRM fields are used to add fields to CRM records. These include activity, marketing, support records. Examples are tasks, events, campaigns, or cases. Then we have transaction item options. These are used to add fields to the line items of your transaction records, such as purchase items, sales items, web store items. When adding a custom field to the line items of a transaction, you apply the field to the type of line item. I'm not going to go over this one in detail today or the CRM fields, but it's just to give you an idea that these things are available. Item number fields used to add fields to a serial or lot numbered inventory records to track information specific to each item or workflow unique to your business. For example, quality control procedures or recall information could be tracked. There are some pre-made fields on serial and lot numbered, but you can add custom fields there as well. And then this other record fields type. Other record fields, they're used to add fields to custom records that are not defined by anything that we've talked about so far. This includes campaign events, classes, competitors, departments, locations, and what Mike Keckling and I were discussing right before the meeting is an other record field can be used to add a custom field to an account, a GL account record. So those are the other record fields. So I'm going to go through a demonstration of these later and show you where all of this stuff is, and then show you how to do some custom fields. Excuse me just a moment. Okay. So first of all, I want to talk about some commonly used field types. So when you go to create a new custom field, and it's typically this will apply to almost any field type. So if we're talking about a transaction body field or an item field or an entity field, you're going to have these options of field types. So some common ones: checkboxes, dates, currency, which is basically just formats the values based on a currency. We have an integer number, decimal number, a list record type, which I'll talk about a little bit later as well. Freeform text. Freeform text is the default. And so anytime you create a new custom field, it's going to default to freeform text in most cases. Freeform text, it allows you to add up to 300 characters, or it supports up to 300 characters. Text area, rich text, and long text are all very similar fields. The main difference is they give you a more character limit, a higher character limit. So 4,000 characters, 100,000 characters, million characters. And this might be important if you're creating a custom field. Let's say one of the use cases that comes to mind for me is like if you're integrating an external system like Salesforce. It's a very common integration with NetSuite. You might have a field in another system like Salesforce that is 4,000 characters. Well, if you create a custom field to match that field to the data that's coming from there, then you need to make sure that you're using an appropriate field type in NetSuite. And I'll talk about that here a little bit more as well. SAID 10085. This is a table of custom field type descriptions. So if you want to understand all of the details about these fields and then the other fields that I didn't mention, there's a bunch of other field types like a hyperlink field. There's an image field type. There's an inline HTML field type. And I'm not going to go through all of those in detail, but you can read SAID 10085 to learn more about that and those fields. So I want to talk a little bit about best practices for custom fields. First of all, when you're creating a custom field, it's very important that you understand the field type thoroughly before you choose that field type. So some questions that you want to ask about the data is: what type of data is needed? Are you bringing in a paragraph of text? Are you bringing in a decimal number? Is it going to be a date field? Then you also want to consider how will the data be used. So for example, you can put a number in a free form text field. So you can make the number like 22.87. However, if you want to use that field in a calculation in a formula later on somewhere else, like in a saved search, if it's a formula text, you can't take that field and multiply it or divide it or add it to something else. You can only do that if the field type is a decimal number or an integer number or a currency type field. So you want to make sure that the field type that you're choosing matches the data and the use of what you're going to be using that field for later on. And so I recommend that you choose wisely, because changing the field type will erase all data in that field on records. And I'll show you the little warning that pops up during the demonstration when we change a field type. But it's very important to make sure that you choose that field type properly from the beginning. Now, I will say, if you encounter a situation where you have a custom field and it's been used for a while and there's a bunch of data in that field, and then you need to change the field type because you discover you need to use it for a calculation or something, my recommendation there is to create a saved search, export all of the data that's currently in that field, then change the field type, and then you can re-import and update all of the records with the pre-existing data. And then you might have to kind of reformat the data before you import it back in to make sure it matches the new format. But that's an option if you do have to change the field type after it's been used for a while. So some of the other best practices when you're creating a custom field type, you want to fill in the values. So fill in the label. This is a mandatory field, so you have to do it. But when you create a field label, try and make it as concise as you can, but also descriptive of what the field is. Also fill in the internal ID. So in this example, if the name of the field is example label, which would be a terrible name for a field, I think, but unless you have a use case for that, but you would want to make the internal ID always start with an underscore and then example underscore label. So let's say you wanted to create a custom field called customer category, and I'll demonstrate this later. You would start with underscore customer underscore category. You can't have any spaces in the internal IDs, so we use the underscore as a space. You don't have to use spaces either if you don't want to, or the underscores. It can just be a continuous string of characters. I also highly recommend filling in the description field. The description is for internal use, and this is a field that if an administrator comes to this custom field screen, like I'm showing here, and they want to say, well, I didn't create this field, what is it for? They can see that description here. And this description, it could be different than the external help version. It could have a whole bunch of information that a normal everyday user doesn't need to know, but it can also just be a duplicate of the help. And so my next point is always populate the help. The help is a field, and I don't have oh yeah, it's down here. So the help field, worst case scenario, best practice is to take your description and copy it into the help field so that you have at least some information in the help field. When you are on, or when a user is looking at that field on a record in the system and they click on the name of the field, a little help window pops up, and whatever you put here is going to be what they see. And so it's very important to put that in. So I also forgot to mention, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat window. I think that we have our other board members can help answer some of those questions as they come up. And if it's a question that they want me to address verbally, then co-hosts, please interrupt me and we'll talk about that. But I'm gonna a lot of information, so I'm just gonna kind of keep going through, and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions and answers that we don't apply or address during the meeting. So the other best practice that I have to recommend is the apply to forms option. And so there's two ways to do this. After you put this information in, you can hover over this down arrow and you can hit save and apply to forms. Or if you're editing this after the field has already been created, you can just click on apply to forms. So that's the next thing I want to talk about is that applies to. So when you're applying the field, you're basically defining where that field shows up, what record types it shows up on, and then also specific forms. So the different options will show depending upon the type of field. So if it is a transaction body field, for example, we're going to see the different transaction types. You're going to see purchase or a sale or an opportunity or a journal entry. And you can choose from these options, and that'll make sure that this field shows up on specific record types. So you want to choose the record type or the category of record types you want to apply the field to. You can add or remove options later on. However, I find that most people don't. After the field is created initially, it will you apply it to a bunch of different forms, and then it's just kind of left that way, forever. So the best practice is to use the apply forms feature to control exactly where you want that field to show. The apply to forms will also help you see the related transaction types, such as a cash sale when choosing a sale. And I'll demonstrate this a little bit later on. But for example, if I choose sale and then hit save and not apply to forms, in this case, it'll add this field to sales orders, invoices, cash sales, cash refunds, RMAs. It's this whole list of fields that it'll show on. And it's not always ideal to have it show up on all of those records. I prefer to be very, very specific about it. And I'll go through that in a demonstration a little bit later. Okay, so the next thing to consider on a custom field is the display tab. The display tab is going to give us options where we can say insert before. This defines where the field is placed on records. I personally don't have very good luck with this feature. I usually like to put the field on a subtab. I can define the subtab such as main or related records or shipping or something like that. And then I can go in and move that field around by editing the form later on. So personally, don't really use the insert before, but it's an option to help you kind of preset where that field is going to show up. And then in the display type, this will determine how the field is visible. So normal means the field can be edited. Inline text means it's not editable, but it can be populated via a calculation or a CSV import or something like that. Disabled means it cannot be edited, and it will not display if there's no data in the field. And then hidden means that it cannot be seen on the form at all. But hidden is not an ideal way to be used for field level security. We'll talk about an option to do that a little bit later on here. Suite Answers Article 10097 is going to talk more about the details about the display options. Also, depending upon the field type, the width and height options will show under the display. So you have this display size. It doesn't always show, but depending upon the record type, or I'm sorry, the field type, it will show up there. And then the help, and I talked about this before, fill this in with details about the field, such as the purpose of the data and how it is sourced or calculated, which we'll talk about sourcing and calculating too. So validation and defaulting. So this is, if you notice, we're just kind of going from tab to tab. So if you're looking at a custom field, these are the subtabs, applies to, display, and now we're on the validation and defaulting subtab. So the options that show here are dependent upon the field type that you choose, whether it's an item field or a transaction field or something like that. So checking mandatory makes the field required on the form it applies to. The alternate option here is to modify a specific form to make a field required or mandatory. You can also use workflows to make fields mandatory based on certain criteria. So there's multiple options. This is kind of the scorched earth option, the mandatory on the field item. That means that no matter where it shows up, it's always going to be mandatory. So you don't get a lot of control over when it's mandatory and when it's not when you choose that option here. And then some other common options that you might see on the validation and defaulting are maximum length, minimum value, maximum value. And again, that'll kind of depend upon the field type that you're working with. Default value, so this can be a static value or it can be a calculation using a formula field. This value can be seen on Save Searches results and also used in workflows. So you can default this to a value that's based on the field type. So you can default it to a certain date or a specific number like 1 or 2, or whatever else you want to do. And then the search field here, this is where you can define the results of this field from a Save Search calculation. This is a lot more powerful than the formula option. So if you check the formula and then pop this little box open, you can put in a formula. So you could do like a basic calculation, we could do customer balance times a specific number to, whatever your business use case is. But if you use a Save Search, you can do obviously much more complicated calculations via formulas in the Save Search. This value cannot be seen on the Save Search results or used in workflows unless it is stored. And I don't have a picture of the stored, but up above this area, in this area up here on the item, the custom item form, there's a little store value checkbox, and that'll determine whether the value there is only calculated, it's only visible when you're looking at the field on a record, or if it's a stored value, you can look at it in Save Searches and things like that and use for calculations. We do have a post on our website, rmnsug.org, about this creating a dynamic field so that it does a calculation for you. So there's more detail there. You could go to the post page and search for dynamic field, and we have some more information about that on our website. So talking a little bit more about the sourcing and filtering. So I'm sorry, not more, but about the sourcing and filtering. So again, we're just moving subtabs over, and then here's that store value field that I was just referencing. So sourcing and filtering allows you to source the contents of a custom field from a related record. So in this example, we are sourcing the country from the customer list, from the customer that it applies to this specific record. So this is a transaction body field. So this might apply to a sales order. And so we're creating a custom field called customer's country, and then we're going to have it automatically populate from whatever the default billing address country is from the customer record. And I'll actually show you this in a demonstration a little bit later on. So sourcing and filtering can be used to pre-populate the field based on a related record. The access subtab, this is where you should be leveraging this for field security. So it gives you the ability to control who can see or edit this field. You can restrict by role, department, or subsidiary. So the default on new custom fields is edit level, access level edit, and default level for searching and reporting edit. If this field contains sensitive information that you do not want visible to all employees, for example. So let's say, for example, you wanted to store an employee salary on an employee record. Very sensitive information. I presume you don't want that information available to all of your employees in the company. So you can create this custom field. You can say default access level is none, default level for search and reporting is none, and then you can say the role maybe human resources manager, and then the access level could be view, and then you can say the role administrator access level edit, for example. So this way you can create security for specific field types and information that is sensitive in the system. You can also, back to the display type, you can use a hidden display type if you're kind of testing new fields. So if you're testing a new field in a production environment, you might put in, you might use the field, make it hidden, and then maybe only visible to administrators, for example, if you're doing some testing. Okay, so I'm gonna shift gears. I'm gonna move into a demonstration, and we're gonna go through and just look at some custom field options. So give me just a minute here to switch my screen and see if I can get this to work. Okay. And Mike or somebody, if you could just confirm you can see my screen okay.
Can see it.
All right, perfect. All right, so I have a demo account here. I'm going to use this to do our demonstrations today. And then just real quick, in case you haven't been to our website, rmnsug.org, you can go to our posts. There's a search box here. So as I was mentioning before, you can search for dynamic field, how to store a dynamic field on a record. So that was from a meeting a couple years ago. So there's information there about that. So you can search for all of that information. And I will reference a couple of other things that we've done before on our website here. So go ahead and just bookmark our website so that you have our posts always handy if you need to find some information. Anyway, all right, so I'm in a demo account and I'm going to create some custom fields. So I'm logged in as an administrator. This is the standard classic center. So it's all of the standard drop downs and categories that we have here. To create custom fields, I'm going to go to customization, list records and fields. And the first thing that I'm going to do today is I'm going to start with an entity field. But you can see here, these are all of the different customizations. So most of the customizations we're going to be looking at today are in this list records and fields. We're also going to be looking at the forms section a little bit as well. So if we look at the list records and fields, we have entity fields, item fields, CRM fields, transaction body, transaction line, item options, item number, other record. Those should all be familiar to you now. We just talked about them all a little bit ago. So first of all, I'm going to do entity fields. And I always like to start by looking at the fields that are available instead of just hitting new from here. So I'm just going to hold down Control on my keyboard and hit click and open that in a new tab. That's just a habit I have. So these are all of the custom entity fields that are in the system now. A lot of these fields are from a bundle that was installed. So like this is the EFT bundle. One way you can kind of declutter this is choose none from the from bundle field. And then you can see just the fields that are custom fields that were created that were not installed from a bundle. Just a little side note there. So I'm going to click on new. We'll do a custom entity field. So the field I'm going to create today is called a customer category. Okay. And so my best practice, as I mentioned before, I'm going to put in a internal ID, and we'll take a look at that later on. And sometimes I'll just copy this, paste it in here, and then put in my underscores like that. And the system will change it to all lowercase, so you can put in the capitals. It doesn't matter, just like that. So the description, this. I mean, sometimes it's obvious, but if maybe this field is copied from another system, you might say this comes from Salesforce, maybe, or if you have another system like MailChimp or something like that that's connected, put that in here. Put that description in here of where the data comes from. Just be as descriptive as you can. So as I also mentioned, I'm going to copy this description. Before I do anything else, I'm going to come to the display tab. I'm going to paste it into the help. And there's also I don't actually have to do this most of the time. And the reason is I use a tool called Suite Advanced. And I'm going to show you how it works on the next custom field that I do. But Suite Advanced, if you haven't seen it yet, I'd highly recommend checking it out. I use it every day, and it just saves time and effort in many areas. I'll show you what I mean here after a minute. Okay, so for this field, I only want it to apply to customers. So all I'm going to do is customer. If you wanted it to apply to other entity types, then you would choose these other options down here. One thing that I'll note about project, you might think, that's kind of weird. That's not really an entity, but NetSuite sees a project as an entity. And so if you're looking for projects, you'll find that in lists, relationships, projects. It's just kind of a little quirk. I think it probably makes sense at some level that a project is a relationship. But that's just kind of a little side note on seeing that on an entity field. So if you want to create a custom field on a project record, it's an entity. Okay, so for now, I'm just going to leave everything the same. The display, I'm not going to choose anything here. I'll do that. I'll change that on subsequent fields that I make here. Validation and defaulting. All of this information, I'm just going to leave as is, and because you're not always going to need to fill in anything else here. Maybe it's just a basic field. So I'm going to, well, actually, before I save this, one other thing I wanted to mention is this global search field. So global search means that if you check that box, that whatever is in this field on a record, or on a customer record in this case, you can search for that in the global search bar. On this type of field, you don't really want to do that. But if you have a field that contains unique value, so maybe you have a custom transaction body field on a vendor bill, and you want to put in an invoice number. I know there's a default way to place for that in NetSuite, but I'm trying to think of a better example. Maybe there's a memo coming from the invoice that you want to store that references another transaction or something. You click the global search, and then when that means that whatever values in these fields you can search for up here. If global search is not checked, you will not be able to search for that value in the global search bar. Okay, so I'm going to just move on. I'm going to save this customer category. And I didn't do the apply to yet, but I will do that on the next one here. So the next one I'm going to do is I'll come back to customization, list record fields. I'm going to create a new item field. And so we'll see our custom item fields here. I'll just click new. And this one, I'm going to, oh, I already have that in my browser history here. Do product category. I'm going to save myself some time. Just copy and paste that, underscore it, okay? And then put in, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna switch real quick. I'm gonna delete that, and I'm gonna show you the Suite Advanced options here. So I do have Suite Advanced enabled, and I'm just going to enable it for this account temporarily. I'm not gonna keep it on the whole time, just because it makes things look a little bit different. So you can see the menus change, and there's a bunch of other stuff, but I'm going to show you what happens. So my custom field, I'm going to call product category. What you'll notice is that the internal ID automatically populated because I have this auto generate ID checked, and that's checked by default. Then also when I put in a description, you'll notice that it also copies that to the help field automatically. So built into this tool are the best practices for creating custom fields. So I highly recommend looking at this tool if you haven't seen it yet. So for this item, for this custom field, I'm not going to switch out yet because I want to save this before I switch out, but I need to choose what it applies to. So I'm going to do, in this case, I'm going to say, I want this field to show up on inventory items. I want it on, it's not going to apply to anything else, a kit or package. And then let's see, I guess there's not assembly items enabled in this account, so I can't apply it to assembly items. So really just physical items is what I want this particular field to apply to. The name is called Suite Advanced. Suite Advanced is that tool. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save. Actually, before I do that, nope, I'm going to save. I'm going to turn off my Suite Advanced. So we go back to just regular NetSuite view. The next thing that I'm going to do is create a transaction body field. So list records and fields and a transaction body field. I'm going to click on new. And in this case, I'm going to create a field that sources the country from the customer record. So I'm going to say customers country. And I'm going to put that in. It's not going to let me do any punctuation, so I'm going to delete that. Even if it's obvious what this is, put in a description, put in a help. There's nothing worse than seeing custom fields and you click on the help and it says, more information for this field is coming soon. Well, I seriously doubt it. If it wasn't done in the first place, it's probably not coming soon. So I'm going to put it in the help window here. And then I'm going to think about the type. So I'm going to do a country. I'm not really going to do anything with that other than source from the customer. It just needs to be a text value. So I think freeform text is fine in this case. What I want this to apply to is sale type records. And I'm going to do the save and apply to forms after this so that we can see how what that looks like. But the important thing here is I'm going to come to my sourcing and filtering, and I'm going to say my source list is a customer record. And then, so now I'm reaching through to customer records that are related to this transaction. And I'm just going to put in the country. So I want the country from the customer record to come in. There's two options here. If I do country name, it actually does the abbreviation. So for United States, it would say US. For United Kingdom, it'll say UK. If you just choose country, it'll be the written out United States, the spelled out version of it. Okay, so that's my sourcing. And now I'm going to apply to forms. Now, if I click on apply to forms from here, it's going to say, you may lose the data you've entered. Are you sure you want to do that? No, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to, first of all, hover and then do save and apply to forms. So I'm going to save the field and then takes me to the apply to forms. Now, if you recall, I chose sale. And we can look and see all of the records that this is automatically going to apply to. So it's going to it's going to apply to cash refunds. I'll correct myself. What record types and the specific form that it'll appear on. So cash refund, cash sale, credit memo, estimates, inventory transfer. That seems kind of not necessary. Invoice may be necessary. Request for quote, that might be necessary. Return authorization, maybe not. And then you'll see on the sales order, it just applied it to every single sales order form that we have here in the system. What I would typically like to do is I'll come to the top and I'll just say, I don't want it to apply to anything except for sales orders. You can just click unmark all and it'll just unmark everything. And then you come down to the sales orders and mark the form you want it to show on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. As I said, though, this field may apply to other transaction types, so it might make sense to put it on the invoice. So I'll just come up to my invoice. I'll put it on my invoice records, and then I'm also going to come to my sales order. So no matter what sales order form I'm using, I want this field to show up on that form. Okay, so we're going to just leave that there, and then I'm going to save that. And so now I've chosen very specifically where I want this field to show up in the system. One thing that I also want to do with this field is I wanted to show you the sub-tab of where we want it to show up. So I'm going to come down to the display sub-tab. And like I said, do the insert before. I just don't have very good luck with that. And so I use the subtab. And so by default, when you create a custom field and you don't choose anything here, it's going to create a subtab on the transactions called custom. And those custom fields are going to show up under that custom subtab. If you want this to show up in a specific place, like somewhere in the header level of the record, then you would choose a different subtab. In this case, I'm going to choose main, and main actually isn't a subtab. It's going to be the header level field of the transaction. So in this case, I'm going to choose main, and it'll just be at the very last field on the main section of the transaction. So that's all I wanted it to do. I'm going to just save that after that one change that I made. All right, thanks for answering the questions, board members. I appreciate that. Okay, and the next thing that I'm going to do, let me just mark off the things I've done. So the next one I'm going to do is the last custom field is a transaction line field. So we'll do customization list records fields, transaction line field. And I'll just click new this time for fun. So this takes me to my transaction line fields. And remember, this is a custom, also known as a custom column field on transactions. So what I want to do is I actually want to source this value, this field, from the custom item field product category that I just created. So in this case, I'm going to define a product category on an item record. And then in this case, I'm going to take that value and I'm going to put it on the line of the transaction. So you have to create the custom field on the custom item or on the item first. You don't have to do this from a custom field. You can do it from other types. So in this case, it's the same thing. It's product category because I'm just going to mimic what I did with this one here. So product category, always best practices. And I could cheat on this one. The custom transaction line fields, you can't click on a help. Although I thought I read something that you might be able to do that with the new 22.2. I don't recall for sure. But anyway, you still want to populate the values. It's best practice. Okay, so product category, again, I'm going to leave, I need to match whatever this field type is. This field is freeform text. This is freeform text. I want this to apply to sales. And then I'm going to come to my sourcing and filtering, and I'm going to source from an item. And I'm going to source from the product category field that I just created here. So whatever's on the item record, it's going to flow to the transaction line on these sales transactions. In this case, I'm also going to do save and apply to forms. I only want this to show on, let's see, sales orders, invoices, cash sales, maybe. So I'm going to unmark all, say cash sales, invoices, sales orders. Okay, then we'll save. All right, so now let's put all this together. I am going to, first of all, I'm going to go to an item. So this is an item I'm going to use doing for testing. And so now I need to find this custom item field that I created. If you recall, I said it's under the custom tab, subtab by default. So here it is, product category. So I'm going to edit this record. I'm going to call this, what is this? This is an iPad. So we're going to call it a tablet. That's my product category. Okay. So all I'm going to do is save that. And then what else did we do? We did a custom entity field and we did a transaction body field. So I'm not going to do, so I think we're going to use that. We're going to look at that customer's country field here. So let's do this. Let's go and create a new sales order. So I'm just going to enter a new sales order. And my customer, I want to do blue pumpkin because fall is right around the corner. I don't know what blue pumpkin does, but I like that name. Okay, so if you remember, I created the customer's country transaction body field. Here it is down here. So if you'll notice, it automatically sourced that value from the customer record blue pumpkin. If I change the customer to another customer record, before I save the transaction, you'll see that this is going to update automatically. So United Kingdom versus United States. So I'll just go ahead and leave it with blue clouds for now. And if you also recall, we put this on the main subtab. So the main is basically going to make it the last field in this main section. We could also choose a subtab such as items, billing, shipping, accounting, wherever you want that field to show up. If I don't choose anything, it would show up under this custom subtab by default. All right, so then I also want to use that inventory item that we just did something with, iPad Pro 9.7. So let's see. Let me find this inventory iPad Pro 9.7. I think that's the one. So as I entered this field, you remember we created the custom line. We applied it to sales orders. I'm going to add this. And so when you add it to a transaction, it's going to automatically be the very last field in this list. And you can change that. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But you can see that it automatically sourced that value from the iPad because I edited the item. I added the value tablet, and now it's sourcing right into this transaction line field. Okay, so I'll just save this for the fun of it. So we've covered custom entity field, customer category. We haven't used that one yet. The item field, product category, the transaction body field, country, the customer's country, and then we did a custom transaction line field. And we've demonstrated how all of those work. So I am going to, at this point, jump back to my slideshow. Give me just a moment. And after this next section, I think we'll take a 5-minute break and then come back and finish up after that, just so you know. From current slide. Okay, so we've done our demonstration. Let's move on to the next topic. So the next topic is custom lists. This is very short. It's very simple, but it is a very powerful way to control the customizations in your system. So a custom list is used to create a custom field with predetermined value options. So the key here is that it maintains uniformity in the data in your system. Another benefit of using a custom list is that it allows you to use the values to trigger other actions such as workflows. And so what I mean by that is let's take the product category custom field that we just created, for example. So I made that a free-form text field. And so what that means is that anybody that can edit an item record can type in any value they want in that product category field. Well, let's say I'm building a workflow and I want to say when the field is changed from a tablet to something else, to a predefined value like tablet to handheld computer, for example, I need to make sure that the values in that field are very, very specific, or they're only specific options. So if it's a free-form text field, I can't control what people put into that field. But with a custom list, I can create a list and then I can apply it to that custom field. And then when you choose, or if somebody's going to change the value on that item record, they can only choose one of the predefined options. So it's a small topic, but I think it's very important. And it's a best practice to utilize this whenever you can to keep the data in your system uniform. So that's the only slide I have on that. I'm going to jump back into my demonstration. Let me see if I can just do this. Okay, so this was the sales order that I just created. So the next thing I'm going to do then is I'm going to create a custom list, and I'm going to do it keeping in mind I want to create a custom field from this custom list. So I'm going to come up to customization, list records, fields, and lists. Now I'll just mention there's two different types of lists in NetSuite. There's these types of lists, custom lists, and there's also accounting lists. And accounting lists are a little bit different functionality. They're going to apply to other things like payment types or terms and different things like that. So just wanted to mention that they are two separate things in the system. So here's my custom list. I'm gonna let's close a couple tabs here. I always end up with like 100 tabs open because I have that habit. I'm sure other people know what I'm talking about. So here's my custom list. I'm just going to click on new. And again, you can see all the lists that were installed by bundles. And I'm going to call this customer category. Okay. Again, same best practices. Create an internal ID. Put in a description, even if it's obvious. I think that needs an apostrophe, right? It's possessive. Okay. So give me just a second. I'm going to type in some values here. So we're going to say government, agriculture, energy, let's say nonprofit. So these are just different customer categories. Some of the bundles and modules that you may have installed in your NetSuite instance may have this type of field already created with some pre-made values. In that case, sometimes you can't really control what's on that list. You can add things, but you may not be able to remove them. And so you may find a need to control it a little bit more by having your own version of that custom field and custom list. Let's see. I think we'll just add one more, consumer. So another option that we have here in this custom list is we can show the options either in the order that they're entered, which is what I just now did, or I can have it alphabetize those for me automatically. I prefer that, so I'm going to choose alphabetical. It doesn't change it here, but you'll see when we choose this drop down on a customer record, it will be alphabetized at that point. So I'm going to save my custom list. It's called customer category. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to create a new entity field. And this is my customer category. Let's see why that Suite Advanced tool is so handy. What is my, let's see. Help, put it in there, just do it. This is going to apply to customers. Now, I want this to source from that list that I just created. So the type is a little bit different. It's going to be a list record type. And the value that I'm going to pull from is the list that I just made. So I'm going to just look for customer category in this list. Looks like there's two of them. I didn't mean to duplicate that. I hope that's the one. I'm going to choose the second one, just in case that's like if it's showing it in chronological order. That's the one that we want to do. All right, so I have my label, my ID, my description, my help field. I'm going to apply this to customers, and I'm going to make sure that it only lets me choose values from this list. All right, so I'm going to save this. Let's just call this customer category Oh no, it's not going to let me. Oh, I've broken it. Okay, I'm going to call this customer category 2 because apparently in my testing, I didn't delete the first version that I did of this list record, customer category. It's bad practice to have this 2 and 3 and 4 in there, so don't make duplicates, but just for demo. All right, we'll save this now. All right, so now I'm going to go back to my customer. Let's find my Blue Pumpkin customer record. Loading, loading, loading. And so where's that field going to be? Well, I didn't define where it is. So it's not going to show up because the sub tab is not showing. So the custom sub tab isn't set to show on this customer form. So I'm going to go back to my custom field that I just created. And I'm going to change where it shows up because I've purposefully said maybe I don't want a custom sub tab. I want everything, in a specific place. So that's an entity field, customer category. Oh yeah, see there, I did do it before. I forgot, I created that in the first step. I was just going to edit that one, but I just created a new one instead. Okay, so display. Wait for it to catch up. There we go. I'm going to put it on the main sub tab to make sure that it shows up. Defeating myself in my demo here. All right, I'm going to refresh this customer record, and there's my customer category 2 field. If I click on the help, I can see that that's the information I populated. And another thing I'll just point out is that when we create these internal IDs, you can see that NetSuite is always going to append the beginning of the ID with a custom entity or a custom item or a custom column, CUST, COL, whatever the custom field type is. And so that's why I always like to do the underscore first so that it separates that field ID out. All right, I'm going to edit this and we're going to look at that custom field I just created. And you can see this is now a drop down. And apparently the custom list that I chose doesn't have any values. So I'm going to edit that again real quick. Choose the other customer category. And here's this note I was talking about earlier. Changing this custom field type will delete all the data in existing records. Are you sure you want to do this? I am sure right now. You may not be sure later. Okay, I'm going to refresh this page. And now we can see I chose the right list on my custom field and it alphabetized them for me. So we have agriculture, consumer, energy. What is this? This is Blue Pumpkin. It's probably agriculture. So I'm going to go ahead and choose agriculture and then save. Okay. So I'm just going to take a minute right before our break here. Are there any questions that haven't been answered in the chat window? Anything that I should discuss that we've covered so far? Board members, so we're good. Looks like you guys have been busy in the chat window there. Thank you for that. Okay, well, I'm going to take a minute here then, and we're going to pause. Let me just. All right, Mike, can you confirm you can hear and see me okay again still?
I can confirm that.
Thank you, Margie, or Dana and Margie and Mike. All right, let's go ahead and get started again. So next topic we're going to be talking about is custom forms. So custom forms, there's a couple different types. forms, first of all, are the pages used to enter information into the NetSuite database. There are two main form types. First of all are entity forms. So these are used for record types that are not entry forms, sorry, entry forms used for record types that are not transactions. So example of that would be items, customers, vendors, employees, and many more. So those are forms that are used to put information into the system that's not transaction based. Then we have transaction forms. These are used for all transaction record types. Examples are sales orders, item fulfillments, invoices, bills, journal entries, etc. So custom forms, we have entry forms, transaction forms. So we'll talk about our best practices when it comes to forms, custom forms. I have a screenshot here of some of the custom transaction forms. So if you go to the custom transaction form page, you'll see a bunch of this stuff. And I'll go through this in a demo here in a bit as well. So best practices, create custom forms for all your common record types. So what you want to do is start with the pre-built form. There's always going to be a standard form, such as standard assembly build. And you can see over here, we know that this is a default form because it says customize. If it's already a form that has been customized, it'll say edit over here instead. So this primary assembly build is a form that has already been customized and then and made specific for the business purposes. After you create a copy of that form, you want to remove fields that are not used in your business process. The goal should be to have clean, uncluttered information. And this goes back to when I was talking about the applies to tab on item fields. I don't let the system just throw that field everywhere I want. It's kind of, in my opinion, it's sloppy. And it clutters up the system. And the more information you have on a screen, first of all, it's harder to find the information that you're looking for. And secondly, you may have pertinent information there that just gets overlooked all the time because there's just so much clutter on the screen that it's hard for people to see the important information. So remove the fields that are not used for your business processes. Ideally, this is done during your NetSuite implementation, but I have seen many times where these best practices are not followed by whoever's doing the implementation. And then the naming convention should be consistent. So if your company is Acme, you would edit your forms, call them Acme sales order, Acme purchase order, Acme customer, for example. So rename them and be consistent with that naming convention. So we'll talk about some of the settings on these custom forms. And I'm going to go through these a little bit quick because I want to make sure I save time for demonstration. So I'm going to cruise through these next few slides. There's a lot of information here. These slides are going to be posted on our website, so you can go back and review this information later on. And as you're doing customizations in your own system. So store form with record. So that's this setting right here. This ensures that your records are viewed and edited with this form, regardless of who is viewing or editing the record. This is useful for cases when maybe you're bringing in sales orders from a website, like a Shopify website, for example, and you have a very specific form for your Shopify orders that doesn't apply to any other orders in your system. And whenever those orders come in, you want to make sure that the form, the Shopify sales order form, is always used when you're viewing that a Shopify sales order. So store form with record will ensure that happens. Form is preferred. So this is it makes it be the default form that's used. So if you go to transactions, sales order, new, whatever form is marked as preferred is going to be the one that comes up automatically. And then this use for pop-ups field, if you're going to create a transaction or a record from another record. So you use this in pop-ups when you add a record of this type from another record. So let's say, for example, you're on a sales order and you go to the customer field and you want to add a new customer on the fly, you can use the little up arrow. It's a little pop-up, and that pop-up opens up a window, and it has all of the information that you need to enter to enter a new customer record. So this is where you would say which form you want to specify for that purpose. And then you can also say only use this form for pop-up, for example. Okay. Next setting is the field groups. So I'm going to kind of go through these tabs as they are in the system. So field groups, this is the field grouping that you'll see on a record. So the first subtab here represents the subtab. And then below that are the groups. So the grouping is basically, if you look at a customer record, the primary information is a group. The email, phone, address is a group. Below that, you might have a classification as a group. So this is where you can define the groups, the groups that are in that section. Fields, custom forms, fields. So all the fields that are either showing on the form. So again, we're looking at this subtab here. This is where you can disable fields from showing on the form. This is also where you can organize the fields and group them as appropriately. So you can choose which fields show up in which groups that we just looked at over here. You can choose to make fields mandatory. You can set the display type from here. And the display types that you see here are the same as we've already discussed. So the mandatory and the display type we can set at a custom field level, which is applies everywhere. If you don't set them on the custom item level, you can, or on the custom field level, you can choose it on a specific form. So you can say on this form, I always want the field to be mandatory, or on this form, I only want it to be inline text, even though the custom field may have a different setting by default. All of the settings that you choose here are only going to apply to this form. And so you can have multiple forms with different settings. The next tab over is the Actions tab. Oh, and one other thing I want to mention. If we're talking about a transaction form, the fields that we see here are not the sublist fields like the item level fields, which I'll show you that here in just a minute. Just wanted to note that. So the actions determine what can be performed by the user when viewing a record that uses this form. So in the actions, you can say the actions are typically the buttons at the top of the screen, or there's usually a more drop down, and that would be the actions drop down menu. So over here we can say display as a button or display in the menu. And so you can control, like if you wanted to remove all of the buttons that show up by default at the top of a transaction, you can put them all in a drop-down menu, or you can bring them all up and make everything a button. There are other ways to control what actions you see on a transaction. You can create custom actions and things like that, but this is just kind of the default settings for the forms. So sublists. So this is not the sublist fields, but this is the sublist, which determines which sublists are available on the form. So a sublist is when you look at a subtab, you'll see messages, activities, events, tasks. So this is the communication subtab, and then you'll see these different sublists on that subtab. If you look at the relationship subtab, you're going to see the contacts, for example. If you look at related records, there's going to be, you can put other subtabs or sublists underneath those related records. So this is where you control which sublists you want to see on the form. Now, this is the sublist fields that I was referencing. So this applies to transactions. So sublist fields here, you can rename or change the visibility of sublist fields on the form. But we do have limited control. You don't have the ability to make them mandatory or change the display type. It's only basically show it or don't show it, but you can rename it by clicking into one of the cells over here and changing it. So in the background, NetSuite calls a project a job, but maybe you refer to projects as jobs as well. And you want this, this field to say job instead of project. Well, you just delete that and type in job.
Hey, Cory,
Yes,
can I be rude and just throw one thing out there?
please.
I discovered that if you erase the label, it doesn't show the column, but it actually keeps it there in the database. So if you need that field to be populated and moved to another, you know what I mean? Like you still need the field, but you just don't want to show it. If you erase the label, it gets rid of it.
That's a great point. That's good to know.
One of those weird things. Okay.
A tip and trick. All right, thanks, Dana. Okay, so let's see. For entry forms, the sublist field shows in the fields subtab. For transaction forms, the sublist fields show in the sublist fields tab. Another really cool functionality here is this item filter. So the item filter, that's this option right here. This allows you to choose a saved search that will limit the items that are available to be used with this form. So let's say you have different sales divisions within your company. Maybe you have a government sales division and a consumer sales division, and you have products that are specific only to government sales or government agencies, maybe like GSA type items. You can create a saved search that defines a list of items, and that list of items are the only ones that will be visible when using this form. So in this case, you might call it GSA sales form, and any of the items you specify that are going to be available on that sales order are only ones that are defined in the saved search that you choose in this item filter. Took me a long time to discover this, but once I did, it's a pretty cool feature. Okay, next one is printing fields. So the printing fields, first of all, printing fields only show when the basic printing type is selected on the form. You can choose the fields that will print by the section. So you can choose them. There's a header, a footer, a body, and a column. And I'm going to show briefly the printing templates a little bit later here. And so you'll understand kind of what this, how this applies. But if you change the printing type to advanced PDF, HTML printing type, then this subtab doesn't show anymore. And instead, the fields that get printed are defined on the advanced PDF templates. And we'll review that a little bit later. Last one here is the linked forms. So the linked forms is a great way to basically define which transactions or which forms are used in subsequent transactions or transactions that are related to this one. So if this is a sales order transaction form, you might want to specify the invoice or cash sale forms that are used from this, and also the item fulfillment, the packing slip, the picking ticket, any field that's basically related, or I'm sorry, any transaction that's related to this this transaction. The nice thing about this is that you can have a preferred form, and that preferred form isn't necessarily the one that gets used on downstream transactions that are related to this. In this case, it would be a sales order. So that's what the linked forms functionality is for. All right, so I think I'm doing good on time. I want to jump into a demonstration at this point. Let's go here. All right, so let me bring up my notes. Okay, so there's so much you can do with forms. I'm not going to be able to really go through all of the functionality and capability, but we'll just talk about some of the best practices, how to get a custom form or create a new custom form. So we'll go to customization, and this time the forms subtab, and you can see here that we have entry forms and transaction forms. We talked about those, so that's where you find each of those. Here's also where we find our advanced PDF and HTML templates, and then our transaction form PDF and HTML layouts. So these are the basic, these are the layouts that are going to be used for the basic printing type. This is for the advanced printing type. We also have these address forms, which I didn't really talk about. I have modified or created a custom address form before, but basically this can be used if you want to add a custom field to an address. That's where you would create, I think, an other record type custom field, and then you can apply it to an address form here. And then also on this menu, we have subtabs and sublists. So you can create a subtab on a transaction and put new other fields there. And then we can also create sublists. And if I have time, it's a little bit of a bonus demo, but if I have time, I'm going to create a sublist at the end of this presentation. But for now, I'm going to go to my transaction forms. Close some tabs here. Okay, so I'm going to create a custom sales order form, just because a lot of things start with sales orders in NetSuite. And we can see here on our sales orders, and I'll just highlight these. I like to sort by the type so that all of the custom form types are in the same area. And so over here we have this customize option. That means that these are the default forms created by NetSuite. Then we have the ones that are available to edit. That means these have already been customized from the standard forms. Let's see. I also wanted to point out down here, there's these external forms. These external types are used, I've seen them mostly be used in like a customer center. So if you use the customer center feature of NetSuite, you can give your customers a portal that they can log into that's basically logging into your NetSuite system, but with very, very, very limited access. And when you want to create a sales order, a custom sales order form, so they can enter their own order, for example, that's what these external forms are for. There's probably some other use cases for them, but that's where I've seen them be used before. So I'm just going to take a standard form and I'm going to customize it. We'll pretend these ones don't exist yet. This, I'll also point out, for standard sales orders, we have a cash sale and an invoice form. Typically, and I'm not seeing it, and I'm not quite sure why, but I thought there was just a standard sales order where it could go to an invoice or a cash sale. But typically, whether it goes to invoice or cash sale depends on whether you have a payment method selected on the sales order. If you have a payment method like credit card or cash or check selected on the sales order, it'll go to a cash sale. If you have no payment method selected, it'll go to an invoice. Anyway, I'm going to choose the standard sales order invoice. I'm going to customize this, and it's going to force me to rename it. So I'm just going to rename it. This account doesn't really have a company name, so we'll just call it Acme Sales Order. And I'm just going to get rid of the invoice part of that because I think we can probably make it go either way. So I'm going to rename it. A lot of this we don't need to really change in most cases, but you can assign a logo to your form. This is if you're using the basic printing. If you're using the advanced printing templates, this doesn't do anything. As far as I know, it's always going to be defined on the advanced PDF HTML template. The form is preferred. We've talked about that. This is where I would set that. And I'm not going to set that now. I'm going to leave it as it is in this account. But if I choose the form is preferred, then that means anytime I go to transactions, sales, enter sales order, this is the form that's going to come up automatically. So we can see we have the tabs. So we can choose what tabs show up on this. We can see our field groups. So under each tab, you can define field groups. My demo account seems to be slowing down on me a little bit. In most cases, you don't have field groups under every section. the exceptions. We have shipping information, shipping address. We have different sections underneath the shipping tab, the billing tab. But a lot of times, like the items sub-tab, there's no sections. Screen fields, this is where we can see the fields that are available on each of the sections, each of the tabs. And again, this isn't the sublist fields. This is just fields that'll show kind of up above the sublist in this case. There's our shipping fields. We can change the display type here. We can choose to show the field, turn it off. Some of them are defaulted and you are hard coded in. You can't change them. That's because there's other processes in NetSuite that require those fields to be on the forms, so we can't turn them off. There are ways to do that with workflows or scripting though. Let's see, what else do we want to show here? You can change where the field shows. So let's look at this main subtab. So in the main subtab, let's go to a recent transaction so we can see these. We can reference this. So you can see these fields. All of these fields here are set on a specific field group, and I can change where they show. So the field group again is primary information. This is a field group. Segmentation. This is a field group. And so I can change where it goes. Now remember this customer's country that we populated before. Well, this is more of a segmentation type field. So I might want to move this to the segmentation. So let's look at this. So let's see if we can find that customer's country. It's a custom field. If you recall, I put it on the main subtab. That's why it's showing up on the main, but I didn't specify where. So if I want to move that up to the segmentation section, I can choose this option here. And the segmentation in this case, I believe has been renamed from classification. So I'm going to choose classification and you'll see it kind of disappeared. But if I scroll back up to the fields that are in the classification section, you'll see that it got grouped with everything else here. This form, let's see. So this form that we're looking at here has been customized. So it's going to be a little bit different than what we're seeing here. But I'll change the form afterwards so that we can see the results. So those are all of our screen fields. Here's the actions subtab, so you can change the actions. You can just turn them off so that you don't want to see these actions. If you don't want people to be able to see the geo impact from the top, you can uncheck that box. If you don't want them to be able to copy the transaction, you can uncheck that so that they can't make a copy directly from this transaction. Here's the sublists that are available. So we have payment schedule sublists under billing. Here's our related records. Here's our sublist fields. And you'll see we don't have as much control as we did before, but as Dana mentioned, we can remove those. So you can click, keep it on show, but then just delete the label. Is that what you said, Dana? It still is clicked on show, but you just delete that.
Yeah, we discovered it with the options field on the items. If people weren't using options, it was showing anyway. So we just deleted the label. Because in some places we couldn't uncheck it. It was grayed out. And so, yeah, we just deleted the label and then now it doesn't show.
Oh, that's really great. So that's a great example because I cannot uncheck that box right here.
I know. And so we just got rid of the label.
Very cool. That's a great tip for sure. Okay, so there's a lot of other things here that we can go through. Here's the linked forms, and we can choose the downstream transactions that are related to this. One other thing that I'll note that I didn't talk about before is that you can use this roles subtab to define which form is preferred by role. So even if you have the form is preferred checked on a different form, you can say, well, I don't care about that. I just want to say that whenever our CEO is creating a sales order, probably not a good idea, but if they are, this is the form that I want them to be used by default. This will be the preferred form for the CEO. It's probably a bad example, but anyway. So I think that's about it on the custom transaction forms. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to change the form that's used on this sales order to the one that I just made. So Acme sales order. I'm going to edit this. Hopefully I'm not getting ahead of myself. Okay, so that's saved. Okay, and you can see here, this is the form that I can choose. So we have this segmentation section. I'm expecting this to go away and change to a classification. Let's see if that happens. So, oh, I edited it too soon. There's my Acme sales order, and it'll just kind of think in the background. It'll load up the new form. So we should see this change a little bit. Perfect. So yeah, like I said, the segmentation has been customized on that other form. So here's our classification. Remember, I moved the customer's country to our classification item group. And what else? On the item, so there's no options showing down here because we grayed that out. And yeah, so that's about it. One other thing that I want to do real quick on the custom forms is I just want to show how to move a field from if you create a custom field and it gets put in that custom sub tab and you want to move it to a different section. I'll just want to demonstrate that real quick. So I'm going to go back to let's do this. We can do it from the item itself. So I'm going to change. I think it's the item record. Under the custom sub tab, we put this product category. So I can also edit the form from here. To do that, I'm going to click on edit. I'm going to come up to the right-hand corner, customize, and then customize form. And that's fine. I'm not going to save any information on here. And I want to move that product category field from the custom sub tab to the segmentation sub tab. So let's just wait for this to load. Come on, it's a demo account. Okay, so where was that field? All right, so I'm going to look at fields. This is an item inventory entry form. So I'm going to look at my fields. What sub tab was it on? It was on custom. Okay, I'm going to go to my custom, and there happens to only be one field there. So I can't do it. I can't change where it's visible from here. So I actually have to do this move elements between subtabs. And this is why it's a good idea to kind of preset where you want the field to show when you're creating the custom field. I could also go back to the custom field and edit it, and it'll move it. But if there's many fields that I want to move at one time, I can use this this functionality here. So I'm going to click on move elements between subtabs. Waiting. And we're going to find the item, or the field. We're going to go to our custom, and here's our product category we want to move. Now, if you want to, if you have a whole bunch of fields that you want to move at one time, what you can do is you can just hit this select box, and then say there's 10. You check the box on all of them. You do this function up here, and you can say, oh, I want all of those fields to go to the segmentation. I'm not seeing segmentation. Not sure why, but that's okay. I'll just
I think
put it
you
in
have to go to main, and then once you're in the form itself, you actually have to change over on the right.
Oh, that's
which
right. Yeah, because it's
subsection.
the item group. That's a great point. Yeah, thank you, Margie. So you would go main in that case, and then we would say apply. And you'll see it chooses the sub tab that it's going to change to over here. You have to hit apply for this to work. The alternate option to that is just to come over here to the subtab and go main. And so it's going to move this product or this field to the main subtab. So I'll just hit save. And then I'll go back to, and I don't have to hit save again. If I do, it'll just say, are you sure? Nothing really changed. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to go back to the item, and we can see under the main, here's our product category. So I moved that field to the main subtab. Now, if I wanted to move it to the segmentation, let's do that. Thank you for that point, Margie. So we'll go to fields. We're under the main subtab. Here's my product category. I want to put it in segmentation. See, it plops it up there with the other segmentations, and then I hit save. And we'll go back to our item record, just make sure it did what we want it to. So now our product category is in the segmentation item group, field group. Okay, so that's it for customizing forms. Lots of options there. These forms, just as a reminder, they affect how your users interact with the system. So it's very important that you're very intentional about the customizations that you're doing on these forms. Remove fields that are not used by the business. Make sure that things are put in a logical place. If it's a shipping related field on a transaction, put it under the shipping subtab. Make it easy for your users to find. All right, so we're going to move back to some slides. We'll talk about our printing options. So under on our transaction forms, and in most, I don't think this really applies to entry forms in most cases. What we're really just referring to transaction forms is our printing option. So we can choose from advanced or basic printing. And you'll see here on the custom form settings, there's advanced or basic. And when you choose new forms, or actually in a new system, basic is enabled by default on all transaction forms. But as I'm thinking about it, the advanced option was just now the default on the form that I just edited. So that may not be true anymore. At one point it was, but maybe NetSuite's defaulting it to advanced templates moving forward. I think that the basic templates are what I call pedestrian. There's very limited functionality to those, and you really should be using the advanced templates in your system. So here is a sample or a screenshot of the basic printing template. So again, this is the transaction form PDF layout. So I showed you where that was in the menu system. It's a WYSIWYG style editor. WYSIWYG is what you see is what you get. You can add or remove elements and change the layout. It has very limited functionality. I'll go show you where this is and do some very, very basic manipulation on it real quick here. And then we have our advanced PDF options. So this is also a WYSIWYG style editor, but it also gives you a code-based editor that gives you full control of the layout. To use this code-based editor, though, you need to understand basic HTML, ideally some CSS, and then it uses the free marker language to customize the form. So there's a couple of different coding disciplines that you need to be familiar with to be able to customize these forms. Although if you're a hacker and you can figure it out as you go, I encourage you to do so, and you can add new fields and move things around pretty easily. But when it gets into extreme customization or more advanced customizations, it does require some skill to be able to do it well. These are very flexible and very customizable. So we actually did a meeting on this that was last year. And so Jillian Pearson from iBailey, she did a really, really great presentation on advanced PDFs. It's a primer, so it shows you the basics of how to start editing them, some tips and tricks and best practices, and even a little bit of advanced stuff. So if you want to know more about the advanced PDF capabilities and how to work with them, go watch this meeting. It's it's a 1 hour section of this whole meeting. We also talked about suite tax and other things in here. But you'll go to our website, go to posts, and then search for advanced PDFs, and then this meeting will come up. Here's the URL just in case you can memorize that real quick. Okay, so I'm going to go back into a demonstration. We'll do some basic editing. So I'm going to go back to customization and forms. Here are the basic layouts. We have transaction form PDF layouts. PDFs are for when you're printing. HTML is the layouts when they're emailed as an HTML in part of an email. You can also email PDFs through transactions. So let's see. So I'm going to find my standard transaction. So when these forms, they apply to all transactions. You can create versions that apply to specific, like just a sales order or just an invoice, but the default, these are the basic options. The default is just a transaction layout. So you start with this, and this applies to all transactions. Here's our editor. It's a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. It's a little bit weird to figure out how this works. After you work with it for a little bit, you get the hang of it. But you have these different fields. You can click on the different fields on the layout. You can change things about that. You can change the font that shows up in that field. You can change the font size. You can make it bold. Do a little bit of basic formatting here. We can move these around, so I can drag this. I can move the bill to over, and then take the ship to. You can see it's kind of not exactly precise, but you can, this top part here, this top part, you can say, you can make sure that they're the same value so that they're lined up. You can add a new custom element. So this is a transaction. So I can say, I want to add, let's see if I can find that. Customers country. So I can add that field to this printout. And I have to kind of expand this window to find the OK button. Then I click OK. So here's the custom element that I just added. So now I can take that and I can drag it. And it's not letting me really. Oh yeah, where did it go? I don't know where it went. I moved it and then it went behind. Oh, it's down here. It's a little bit of a system speed, plus this editor is a little bit wonky. So anyway, that's all I want to show on the basic. I think, worst case scenario, if you need to make a quick change here without moving to the advanced PDF forms, this just gives you an idea of where that is, how to do some basic modification to this. So the next part I'll do is I'll show you the advanced PDFs. Not going to go into a tremendous amount of detail because there's a ton of information there, but I'm going to go to customization forms, advanced PDF HTML layouts. And in this case, we have templates that apply to specific transaction types. And there's all these custom record ones from bundles that are installed. So I'm going to keep going to the bottom here. So we can see we have estimates, invoices, journal entries, purchase orders, sales orders. Let's look at the standard sales order. So I'm going to edit the standard template for a sales order. And this is your WYSIWYG editor. You can work with this. You can change information in here. You can link different fields. You can insert different fields. You can change your columns and layouts. You can add things, add a photograph. The WYSIWYG editor here does take a little bit of getting used to. And to be honest, when I'm editing or creating an advanced PDF HTML template, I don't use the WYSIWYG editor because I find it doesn't give me the control that I really want. And so you can go to the source code, which I'll show you in just a second. But let's say I'm going to create a custom version of this. First you need to do is this template setup. And this is where you can rename it. So I'm going to say Acme sales order PDF HTML template. I can make this preferred, so this template will apply to different forms automatically. I'm not going to do that right now, but I'll just hit save. and then I can do my edits and then save from there. But you have to do your template setup and then save to rename it. If I want to view the source code, you get this little warning that says below or be aware, you may not be able to go back to the WYSIWYG afterwards. That's fine. And then what you'll get is your source code, and you'll see it might be a little familiar to you if you've done anything with HTML in the past, or XML type stuff, maybe, if it comes up. Let's try that again. Here we go. So it's a free marker. It uses some standardized functionality. You can recognize like this function right here, this $ record at title that's pulling in a custom field value. It's not super complicated. If you're a little technically inclined and like to kind of figure some stuff out, I'd encourage you to try working with these a little bit, because it's not really super hard. You can get the hang of it with just a little bit of trial and error, especially if you watch that meeting that we did on it before. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and it reverted, so I'm going to change this, and then I'll save this. So that's all I really wanted to discuss with the printing layouts. There's a lot of information available, or it takes a lot of information to go through this. So reference that meeting that we had before on this. All right, so we're going to go back to the demonstrator, to the slides real quick. And I'm going to have just enough time to go through our custom records and what they are. I don't think I'm going to be able to show you the sublist option, but I'll show you where to find that information in the future. So custom records, here's our Suite Answer article 10140. And I highly recommend you go read this. If you're going to work with custom records, it's a great place to start. And there's a lot of functionality here. I'm only going to be able to skim the surface of what custom records can do for you, but I just want to give you some ideas. So custom records allow you to collect and track information in your account. They are used to bridge any gaps that NetSuite might have to help you with your specific business needs. Some of the examples of a custom record type is a rejection record, employee training courses, customer surveys, events. And I'll also mention, I have a client who sells appliance parts, and they sell them to repair companies. And so the repair company will buy these parts from my client, and then that part might be under warranty from the manufacturer, like GE or Whirlpool, excuse me. And so we need to, or they need to track, be able to get a warranty claim from the installer, and then get a credit back from the manufacturer of that product. So they use custom records to track their warranty claim process. So somebody files the claim, and we have a whole bunch of different fields on their custom record to help facilitate tracking that warranty claim process. So that's just another example of what you can use custom records for. So custom record best practices, it's should be familiar to you at this point. Always enter your internal ID. You want to enter a description of what this custom record is for. A couple of other things that only apply to custom records here is uncheck the include name field. This field is required on new records when it's enabled, and it's really just a nuisance to me, and so I always recommend unchecking it, the include name. Just trust me on that one. Just uncheck it. You don't need it. There may be use cases for it, but I've not seen one yet. But you do want to check the show ID. Yes.
The only one I have is if you're trying to do it from a drop down in another transaction and you're referring to this custom record, if you don't have a name field, it does the internal ID in that drop down.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only time.
That's a great point. There are times when you need it. If you don't need it, for sure, I wouldn't use it because it can be a nuisance. But that's a great point, Dana. Thank you. SAID for custom forms. I saw that question real quick. It's 10140. So check show ID. This ensures that a unique system assigned ID number is visible and searchable. So this is like your internal ID of this custom record. Once you set these values, then you would save, and then you go back and edit the custom record to add those fields. I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a minute.
Hey, Cory.
Yes,
So I just want to add one more best practice I found.
Please.
To go back a slide, is to go hit the numbering subtab. And that way, when these records are created, you can have prefixes or suffixes. So like, if you were creating that warranty thing, for instance, you would want to global search for WAR and then a number, and you'd want them to create with WAR, for instance. You can do that under numbering.
excellent. Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. Thank you. All right. So the other thing that we can do with custom records is that we can assign a parent-child relationship. That means that a custom record can be a child of another record. An example of this is like a rejection record, and you might use a rejection record as part of an approval process. So if you have a purchase order approval process, and whoever is the approver, if they reject the record, you can have a workflow that brings them to a rejection record where they have to type in a reason that they rejected it. And then on that purchase order, you can have this rejected record or rejection reason sublist so that the person who entered the PO can say, well, why was this rejected? They can go see the reason, and the information is right there. Instead of maybe having to send an email or a phone call or a Teams chat or something like that, all of the information is stored right there on that record. The key to this process is to create one field of a list record type on the child record. In this case, the child record is a custom record, and you would mark the option as record as parent. So I'm going to go show you how to do that real quick. All right. So in my example, I'm going to create a custom rejection record. And so again, customization list records fields, record types. So record types, we can see there's a bunch that were installed by some bundles. I don't think there are any here that are, oh, there are a few created, okay, some custom ones. So I'm gonna just create a new custom record type, and I'm gonna call this a rejection. Now we'll just call it rejection. Follow my best practices. The custom record type ID is rejection, used for PO approval processes. And you could apply this to other approval processes, journal entry approvals, or sales order approvals, vendor bill approvals. You can use the same record type on all of those different types of records. You can use the same options. So my option, I'm going to uncheck include name, click show ID. The numbering is what Mike was referring to here. So we can enable the numbering and give a prefix. So we'll call this rejection so it'll be REJ1, REJ2. So that's a great point, Mike. And there's a lot of other fields here. I'm not going to have time to go through those. The main thing I want to do is show you how to add other fields or how to add fields to this record. So I'm going to save this at this point. We're going to come back into our rejection record. And now I can add fields down here at the bottom. So I'm going to click on new field. And we're going to call this a rejection reason. And we will put in our ID. Okay. And this is a free-form text field. That's fine for our use case. You'll recognize a lot of these things here. All these settings are the same types of settings that we saw before. You can choose different field types. You can choose your display types. In this case, there's not an applies to functionality because it only applies to a rejection record type. But you can create custom forms for rejection record. So there's going to be this apply to forms option. For now, all I'm going to do is save this, and I'm going to create one more custom field. And this is the field that I would use to link this record to a parent record. And I'm going to call this rejected record. And in this case, let me put in my, again, self-explanatory, but oops, I forgot to put helping on the last one. I'd forget about it because of Suite Advanced. It makes me lazy. Okay, so in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a list record type. And the record type that I'm going to set here is a transaction, so that I can have this rejection record be a child of a transaction record. And then the very last thing I need to do that's super important for this to work is to check this record as parent. What this means, it's kind of hard to understand just from the description, record as parent, but that means that whatever record is chosen in this field is the parent record. So I'm going to click that and I'm going to save. So what I can also do is I'm going to go back to my list of records, of custom records. I'm going to save this just in case I forgot to save anything. I wanted to be able to show you this, how to create a sublist and show this custom record type on a transaction. I've run out of time to do that, but I'm going to show you where to find out how to do that. One thing that we can do from this record types view is we can see here's our rejection custom record type. I can click on a list over here, so I can see a list of all of the rejections that have been entered in the system. I can also create a new rejection record from here, or create a search of those. In this case, I'm just going to create a new record just for fun, and I'm going to get a sales order SO 567. So my rejection reason is this costs too much. Okay, probably not a good rejection reason. Maybe put in a little bit more information. But anyway, the rejected record. So here is where I'm going to choose the record that this would apply to. And in this case, I have to put in this % because you can see it wants the name of the record type, and then it's going to bring up the record afterwards, or the document number. Oops. So what was that? We're going to SO. It doesn't matter. You can see the list of sales orders here. So if I wanted to not have to do the %, which is just a wildcard, I'd have to type in sales order and then number and then the SO. Instead, I can just do the SO. I could pick any one I want. So that means that once I create a sublist of rejection records on a sales order or a purchase order or whatever, then this rejection reason would show there. And this is, I clicked on it, but it's taking a second to take, but I do want to save this real quick. Okay. And then I'll show you. So now we have one rejection record. Here's our ID, REJ1, because we defined a prefix. Thanks for that, Mike. Yeah, I can go, just like any other record in the system, I can go to a list and see a list of all of my rejections. And then you can also use a workflow. So you can use a workflow to force a rejection reason to be required through the approval process. And so that's a very common use of this rejection type custom record. Okay, so custom records, there's a lot more you can do with them. To be able to assign those to a sublist, we have a presentation on that. So again, go to our website, go to the post sub tab, and just search for sublists. And you'll find this presentation that Margie Caminos did on creating sublists with saved searches in NetSuite. So what we can do is we'll create a save search, we'll create a sublist, we'll use that save search in the sublist, and we'll apply that to sales orders. And then you can choose where you want to see it. So for example, if we would, in this case, I would usually put it under maybe a related records. So you can actually have a value down here that says rejection, and you click on it, and then it would show you the rejection reason that's applied to this specific transaction. So anyway, we're going to go back here. To get more information on the sublists, please go check that out. So that's the end of my presentation today. I'm going to leave you with this quote: logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. So I highly recommend that you think about these customizations that we've talked about today. To solve your business challenges, you can use any of these customizations or a combination of them to create processes that work for your specific company or use case. So thank you all very much. And before we end, there's my email address. If you have any questions you want to follow up on, it's Cory at CoryAndersonConsulting.com. And our checkout code word, all of our CPE folks, our checkout code word is chocolate. So I'm going to leave that up for just a minute. Did I post the wrong SAID, Eric? Maybe I did. Search for custom records in Suite Answers. You'll find the article. All right. CPE checkout code word going once, going twice.
That's something I should be doing as a newbie to NetSuite.
Should be doing,
The
what's that?
CPE.
CPE is typically for folks who are a CPA or an accountant, and
Okay. That's what I thought. Yeah.
There's an organization that requires them to have a certain number of CPE credits annually, and so we provide those for our accounting-based folks.
Okay.
The link is the same. Yeah, sorry, the link is the same for checkout. I'm going to go ahead and post that again. It is the same. It should give it to you. All right. I'm going to stop presenting. Checkout code word is chocolate. So at this point, we're going to turn it over to Margie. Margie's going to talk about custom segments. And you're muted, Margie. Are you there, Margie? We can see your
Yes, I
screen.
am.
Okay,
Yes,
now
I
we can
am.
hear you. Okay.
So, good morning, and thank you very much. Thank you, Cory, for an outstanding presentation. I've been using NetSuite for over 20 years, and I still learned a couple things. So thank you again. I'm going to be talking about custom segments because this theme today is customization, and because custom segments weren't covered, I wanted to talk about some tips and tricks around custom segments. I've been really digging into them the last few months and have learned a lot, and I wanted to share with you some of those key information that I've learned. I have a plethora of information, and because of that, you're going to be actually getting a different slide deck of like 16 slides, and I had to cut it down to like 5 slides in order to be able to show you things today that I thought would be helpful if you aren't familiar with custom segments or if you're fairly new to them. So what is a custom segment? That's sort of the first thing. I mean, all right, we've done custom forms, custom fields, custom records. Basically, are you familiar with a class, department, location, subsidiary? You know, you see them on transaction forms, you see them on some other type of record forms like item forms and things like that. So it is just that. It's like that. It's a very specialized custom field. And I want to show you that before we get into it, because sometimes seeing something makes it so much more understandable. So if we go over to here, here we have an income statement. And normally you bring up an income statement and you see that you might have some filters that you've put in, but there's usually these columns down here and the bottom level here that comes standard with several of the transactional reports that are in NetSuite. And one of those, it says column. I want to call this dimension, because in this you can pull down and you can see these standard segments that come with NetSuite: class, department, location, subsidiary. And those are what I call the dimensions. They're the standard segments, and they're a way of looking at your data. So you can filter your data and you can display any field over here. But what you can do here is, if I were to pick department and refresh, you'll notice that suddenly my data is exploded out by my departments in my system. Wow, this is really beneficial if you're trying to do analysis. So for instance, on your sales by department. So what NetSuite has provided, and it just did this in the last few years, is the ability to create your own custom segment just like this. So you can use it as a dimension to slice and dice your data. So here I've created one called Profit Center, which is basically product line. And you can see here that I've got different product lines for our company: cut and weld, MikTek, plant scan, rad. And suddenly I can see my sales broken out by that. Very powerful, very powerful. So I was really thrilled that NetSuite has not only exposed that, allowing you to create your own, but also that it's improved it over the releases over the last few years. So let's go back to the presentation. And I wanted to show you, talk a little bit more about the custom segment itself. So what is it? So it is a special type of custom field, type list record or multi-select that can be used as a dimension on reports in addition to the standard dimensions segments. So I use those terms interchangeably that NetSuite provides: class, department, location, subsidiary. So for instance, you're already using department and class, and you go, wow, I really want to see my data by sales channel. Like, is something being sold through Amazon? Is it being sold direct through a distributor? Or maybe I want to see it by profit center, which you just saw, by product line, by business line. Or maybe you're a nonprofit and you want to see restricted versus non-restricted funds. Or maybe you sell items and some are consumables versus maintenance type items. So these are all sort of examples. So it allows you to better classify your records for reporting purposes. You can use it like any other custom field, but remember that if you select it as a transaction, it's going to show up in that drop-down filter like we just saw on that income statement. So the next thing I wanted to kind of say real quickly is that there's a custom segment versus custom field. I can't go into all of this due to the limited time I have, but this sort of talks about some of the differences and how they're alike. So, and just like a custom field, if you add this, it will need, and you want to it won't update existing records. You'll need to do a CSV import to update them. Unlike a custom field, it's limited to a list record or multiple select. You can't refer to a custom list, what Cory just talked about. The values must actually be entered into the custom segment, but you can use a CSV import. You can select all record types in one segment. And so in other words, if you want a field to show on a transaction body field and the same thing to show on a transaction line field, you can do that within the one custom segment that you create, which is pretty cool. It's easier to set up than a custom field if you're sourcing from another record. And so you can just sort of read through these slides when you have your time. And what's cool and not so cool. So one of the really cool things is that it circumvents the workflow limitation of only working with item sublists for transactions that look like they're using an item sublist but aren't. So example, inventory adjustment. Let's say on an inventory adjustment, you want something sourced onto every line level of that inventory adjustment. And you want to be able to put in the body level because maybe it's used most frequently, but you want it to show up on the line level of each of those inventory adjustments. They can show up in certain reports. And you go, oh, well, great, I can use a workflow because it's an item sublist. Guess what? It's not an item sublist. It looks like an item sublist, but it isn't. And workflows only work with at the line level, only work with item sublists. But if you use a custom segment, you can have it populate down to the line levels. So what's not so cool is that it doesn't play well with budgets. So it won't show as a dimension or, as in that drop down if you're working with budgets or budget reports. This is the enhancement request you see here. And if you want to be added to it, please do. Maybe it'll push it up the food chain a little bit faster. You can only filter by certain segments, So in other words, the standard one, class, department, location, subsidiary, and custom segments. And as I said before, you can't use an existing list of values. It must be created within the segment. And filtering and sourcing sometimes don't work well together, and NetSuite will inactivate the sourcing if there's a conflict. So let's look at the anatomy of a custom segment for those of you that haven't seen one or played with one before. So, but first I wanted to bring up a couple points. Let's say you're not using class or department. Do you need to create a custom segment? No, you can simply rename one of the standard segments that comes with NetSuite, such as department or class or subsidiary, and use that as your custom segment. And so you don't even need to listen to the rest of this if you're going, oh, I can just use that. So, but let's say you're using class and department, or you just want to have a little bit more flexibility with it, with a segment. So you want to create your own. What you need to do, and this is so simple, I was going to leave it out, but it's faster just to show you, enable features under Suite Cloud, go under Suite GL and check the custom segment button. There is also a different checkbox under accounting preferences, which is in the slides, that will tell you if you want to delete a custom segment. Otherwise, you can only inactivate it, but you will find that in the slides. So as I said, now that once this has been set up, if this hadn't been checked, if you went to customization, because I said it was like a custom field. So logically, it would probably be under customization. So I go customization, list records and fields. And if you do that, suddenly you'll see this custom segments there. If you hadn't had that checked, it would never appear. I know that when Cory did it, it showed because I turned it on. So then, since we're using the same demo account, once you do that, you bring that up and it'll show your custom segments. So it'll allow you to create a new one. So I'm going to be looking at a couple of the custom segments today. So the first one is Profit Center. That's the one you saw in that income statement. And I wanted to sort of go over the anatomy very quickly of a profit center, point out the key things that you need to be aware of. As Cory said, you need to have a record ID. Filtered by, he drummed that in and no one will forget that now. Filtered by only allows you see the standard segments here, class, department, location, and then you see another one, sales channel, filtered by subsidiary. Well, that's another custom segment I created. So it only allows you to filter by, and you'll be showing that because it probably going, well, I don't even know how to use it or what it means. We'll show that in a minute. Then this GL impact. This GL impact is what I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, well, what is the real impact of the GL impact, checking it or not checking it? So I will get into that in a slide and I'll actually demonstrate that. But let me net it out to say that if you're going to have this on a transaction record, then you do want to have GL impact checked because it'll automatically populate, even if you don't show it in the if you only show it in the body level, it'll automatically populate down to the line level, and we'll see that in action. The next thing I wanted to show you is the values. So here, remember I said you actually had to enter in your values directly. So you can do it with the CSV import, and you can drag and drop and move them around. So you don't have to choose alphabetical or the way you enter it. You can actually drag and drop these. The next thing that I wanted to show is that application and sourcing. So this is kind of like, the custom field, you saw what records you could apply it to and the sourcing. It kind of all smushes it into one. So from here, instead of actually picking a transaction body field, a transaction column field, this is a custom item field, it's all within the segment. So you can select every type of record right here and there, instead of, trying to figure out which custom field you want to create. So here we've got the source list. So Cory talked about the sourcing. It's sort of the same. You can see that there's a source list, and depending whether I picked a column field or a body field. So when it says transaction, it's talking about transaction body field. When it says transaction columns, it's the same as saying transaction column, transaction line level field. So if I click on the down arrow, you can see all the places I can source this from. And wherever I select I want to source it from, it's going to add that field to that record. And then you'll have to go in and modify that record and probably move it from the custom tab to somewhere that makes sense for you. Sometimes if you choose like from the customer record, it actually puts it just where you'd think it would. It's like magic. But most other ones, you have to go to the transaction form or the entry form and move it. So here, notice that I have different things. Like I could do this from a customer record. I could pull that information, or I could actually pull it from a segment. So I could actually pull it from class, just like you'll see here. If I choose class, which is one of the standard segments, I would then go back to the class record and choose which fields will be displayed, or which field will display when I select that as the source. So it'll add like another column to the class record. So here I've selected sales transact. This is what records now. So what records? So purchase, transactions, sales, custom. Now, why in the world does it have these as a checkbox separated from that? That's because if you picked sales transactions, it automatically gets applied to every one of these types of sales transactions. And the same with purchase order. So you just look at the help, and you'll find out the detail information. So if in this case, I've applied it to the body level and the line level. And then if I wanted it on an item record, you can see where you'd select that. So that sort of is what I wanted to show you, just a quick tour. You can look on Sweet Answers to find more information about that. Now, going back to the presentation, I said that there was the impact of the GL impact checkbox. That was where I spent most of my time. And this is where a couple things. Once you save the segment, you can't change this GL impact. So if you have it unchecked and you save it, you can't recheck it, and vice versa. So you'd have to delete the segment and then go back in and start over. Whether or not you check or uncheck this, both will display on the reports as a dimension in that dropdown. And again, recommend to check if the segment is on a transaction. So it's really important, you can look through these slides, is that if you display this on the form, whether it's checked on the transaction body and the transaction column, whether this line is displayed, if you don't actually display it on the form, then it actually copies that body level down to the line level. Although you can't see it because you didn't expose it on the line level, it does internally, and you can actually see it on your reports at the line level. So the next thing, just because this was a stumper for me, because I've never imported into classes or departments, you can actually just pick you can just pick classification for the import type, and then you can select the record type is your profit center. So in other words, you can do department, location. Profit center is my custom segment, and it'll allow me to actually select that. Because of that, I don't need an internal ID or anything, because it already knows it's for the profit center, and I can just have the values that I can import. You can also import the sourcing and other things, but at the minimum, all you need are the values, and import your values. So let's see this in action now. So if I go back to here, and I actually go to an invoice, this invoice form does not show the profit center at the line level. So you can see that here, it is not showing, sort of like a little magic trick. There's nothing hidden here, it's all hidden there. And I'm going to select a profit center of let's say demo for this demonstration. Now, nothing is, showing here anymore, but if I save this, and then if I look at the GL impact of that record, you will see that it has basically copied it down to all line levels. So these are the line levels, the iPad Pro, this is a different item. You can see that it's the profit center of demo, yet it's not showing up at the column level or the sub list level. So if I go back to my income statement, which just showed these 4, if I now refresh, you can now see that there is this demo account. So now I've added that. So now let's take a look at a different type of invoice. Now this invoice is identical to the other, except I have exposed the profit center at the line level. Why did I do that? Well, maybe I want to be able to, maybe it's related to a different profit center, these 2 items. So what I can do is I can say profit center is like plant scan. No, but it doesn't populate it. I'm going to show you a little trick that allows you to populate it without using a workflow in just a minute. So meanwhile, I can say, okay, well, this one is plant scan, but this one, because, it's taking it from the list of values, is demo 2. So if I do that and I save this, if I didn't have anything in those column levels, it wouldn't have copied it down. It would have just been blank. So let's go ahead and save this and look at the GL impact. And then you can see how it's got demo 2 and plant scan in some of them. If I hadn't put anything in those columns, nothing would have showed when I went to my income statement. Okay. So now what I'd like to show you is the ability to, and remember, I have that update GL impact checked. So it worked completely different if I didn't have that checked for the first example over here, because it would not have ever copied it down if I hadn't had that GL impact box checked. And it would have just treated it like it was never there at the column level. So back to here. Here's my little tip and trick over here. Now, if I go to my custom segment, and now I say, I want to source this. I want to source from the transaction column level. I want to source it from the profit center on the main line. Notice it's saying some information that I'm going to have to fill in, and I'll do that. So I do that, and I save and edit this. I do have to save and edit, and I have to edit it a second time. Now it's thinking. And now if I say I want to notice this, well, you might not have noticed, but this did not exist before. So this would have been as if I had done it from a class record or from a department record, a new, on a segment, a new column level field would have showed up. So now here I can say, oh, I want this to be plant scan. I want this to be, I'll just do a couple of them here. I want this to be rad. And I want this one to be demo 2. Oh, notice that the drop-down list is just the fields and the values. Those are the only options. I didn't type them in. I only had the options of picking something that's an existing value. So now I save this. And now if I go back to this invoice here, and edit this again, and now I pick rad, notice it's changed them all. It's copied it. It's what I call self-sourcing. And now if I want to, like, let's say I had 30 items here and most of them are going to be red, but there's just a couple items that I want to be different. I could go ahead and just say, this is demo 2 instead. And so I just wanted to kind of show that self-sourcing there, which I think is really cool. Or I might have actually had it sourced from the item record, you know what I mean? And then it would have automatically filled it in from the item record. So now if we go back into this here, you'll see that it looks as it does before. And if I go to my income statement, back to my income statement here, and do a refresh, you'll notice that it now shows demo 2 and the rad here. The last thing I want to show you, and I know I'm just about out of time, or maybe I'm over my time, sorry, is filtering, because I think that's really important too. So if I go to this invoice here and I say I want to filter this, filter it by subsidiary. So, and I click on this drop down, this pull down list. It's only showing Amazon US and direct. So these are my sales channels. But if I go to my segment on that, let's see, I think it's this one here. Notice it's got like several more fields, but it's only showing Amazon US and direct. But I know I want it to be distributor. That's because I've selected to filter on subsidiary. So depending on what subsidiary is selected, I can now filter. And so now I go, oh, I really want, and the invoice that we were looking at actually was United States West. So if I go back to this custom segment, so I want to filter. Well, how do I add the filter? It's down here, set filters. So I can just say, okay, for distributor, I want to be able to say it's, any of these options here. Okay, so now I've set that, basically saying any of these, Canada, United Kingdom, United States, can all sell through a distributor. I set that, I save that, and then I go back to my invoice. I refresh this. And then I pick sales channel. And now distributor shows up. So you can actually filter that. So that's kind of what I wanted to show in a nutshell. I mean, really in a nutshell, I could have, trust me, this presentation was really close to an hour and I've been cutting down, and you will get more information in the slide deck. But if you have any questions that come up, either ask in the open forum or email me at mcomunizat@planscan.com. I thank you very much for your time and hope maybe you've at least learned one piece of information, found one pearl in the oysters here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Margie. There's a
that's it.
question in the chat. Will it populate an item group header and total line on a transaction lines, or just the items within the group and transaction lines?
I
Do you
don't think
know?
it'll do the group. When you say an item group header, I'm not really sure, means definitely won't the total line. It shouldn't impact that at all. I don't think it'll work. Maybe someone else knows more, but if you mean the group header, like where it sums things up at the top, I don't think it'll do that. What do you mean by group header line? Can you, okay.
Yeah, I suspect that it's still going to be at the individual item level and not at that group header level.
I mean, it can be at the body level, if that's what you mean. And
I think it's based on the grouping of items in the transaction lines.
Okay. It will work with item groups if that's what they're asking, but I'm not, maybe the person can unmute themselves, or we can discuss this in the open forum, or email me and we can talk, because I'm not quite sure what you mean by populate an item group header.
Yeah, that was me. I'll go ahead and email you, but I can test it myself. When I workflow it, I get both the header line, you know, that shows on the invoice, as well as the total line, and that causes us issues. So I'm going to try this, and then I'll ping you or something. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Margie. Very informative. Great stuff. So this will begin our open forum session, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike, if that's okay. You can kind of help facilitate this. And I just wanted to also mention real quick, the meeting evaluation surveys that we send out, please take a few minutes to fill that out, give us ideas for where to host our happy hours, give us meeting topic ideas, and then any constructive criticism for our meetings. We take that and try and do better next time. So please fill those out. And again, thank you to Salto, our Suite App sponsor today. If you didn't get a chance to register for their raffle, I'll post that in the chat window one more time. And that's all that I have. So Mike, I'm going to let you, if that's okay, take it over from here.
Yep, that works.
Thank you.
So this part of the meeting is for anybody who has any questions, just things that you've been dealing with day to day in your system. Definitely feel free to just come off mute and ask or post, and we'll see where it goes. So if anybody has questions, I can say I have one, but I think I asked it in the last meeting, but I'll wait for somebody else first.
Hi, Mike. This is Ryan Balla. I have a quick question for the experts here. And I have a case opened up with NetSuite too that they've been looking at for 3 weeks. But does anybody know of a setting on a sales order going to a cash sale? So first cash sale captures the original authorization, but the second cash sale is trying to capture that same authorization instead of doing another sale with an auth and a capture. And I just didn't know if anybody here happened to have some insight onto where that default setting might be. It's only in our production environment, and we cannot replicate it in either of our sandbox environments.
So the second cash sale, what do you want it to do? You want it to use the original auth code, and then it just shows up in the settlement batch?
Yeah, we want the second cash sale. It should do another auth capture.
Okay,
So,
a separate auth.
Yeah, we capture at fulfillment, and when we have split shipments or pre-orders, and we end up with more than one cash sale.
Oof. I don't know the answer to this. What I would suggest is, and you probably already looked at this, is looking under the payment events on the cash sale.
Mm-hmm.
You probably already looked there though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see why this wouldn't work, based on how the credit card transactions work natively, because it's just linked to that original authorization only, and you can kind of like only use that authorization once, right?
Right.
Yeah. Who's your credit card processor?
It's CyberSource.
Okay. I have you talked to them, because there may be some functionality, because part of the credit card transaction functionality is dependent upon the processor. So they may have some options for you there if you haven't already looked at that path.
Yeah, I have something open with them too. What's odd is it just started happening recently, and even with the sandbox refresh linked to their sandbox, it doesn't happen. We can't replicate it any place else except for production. But I thought maybe there was a magic switch someplace that I was missing.
Not that I know of.
All right.
Yeah,
You see the chat, Blake mentioned something in the chat.
Split the fulfillment and not lose authorization. Okay, well, we'll look at that. Thanks, Blake.
The only other thing I can think of, Ryan, is that I think there's a checkbox called like new credit card or something like that under if you're using payment instruments.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure what would happen if you check that on a credit card that it already had.
Yeah, and we are using payment instruments, so I'll look for that too, and we'll see if something different between sandbox and production. Just haven't found it yet. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Oh, here we go from Daniel on the chat. Let's see, billing schedule set up based on payment terms. I guess, Daniel, it's a pretty long chat. Do you want to come off a mute and kind of walk us through it?
Yeah. So basically, we previously sent out invoices based on the subscription start date and their payment terms. So if they had a 3-year order, we would send out the invoice and net 30 terms. We would send out the invoice 30 days before their subscription would renew, so that the idea being we get payment by the renewal date. We no longer want to do that, and we've moved to a new workflow that automates sending out invoices for year 2 and 3. But the issue is we have all this old data that still has to be sent out based on, you know, their net payment terms and the subscription start dates. And we need to update the old data to use the new workflow because it's based on anniversary date, not our old way. Does that make sense?
Somewhat.
Yeah.
When you say update the old data, what is that? What is the data?
So that would be orders that were 3 years or 5 years in length that are on the old payment terms. So stuff that we, for example, sold last year, we need to send out the 2nd year invoice next month, let's say. They're still on the old way of doing things where it's got to be sent out 30 days before the subscription date starts, rather than the new way, which is based on the anniversary date of the invoice.
Yeah, I'm a little stumped on this. Does anybody else have any? I think
Is
this
it
one of
just a matter of updating the terms on those old invoices so that your new way picks up because of the new payment terms?
That's an option. I'll look
And
into that.
if you've got it set so that you allow changes in closed periods, you know, that setting on the account
Right.
period to make changes in prior periods that are closed. If you have that checked, then you can go make changes on those transactions that don't have a GL impact, which the payment terms would not.
Okay. Okay, cool.
I don't know if that would work, but it's like you'd have to turn off, if the old way was running off of a workflow or something, you would have to turn off the workflow on all those records, redo the payment terms, and then maybe your new way would catch it.
Yeah, the old way, we've been setting up tasks to email us out so that we
Oh.
can manually send the.
Okay, so that's not a problem. It's not going to automatically go.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you should be able to just export the header of those and then import an update, just updating the payment term,
Okay.
possibly.
Cool.
All right. Any other questions? All right, well, I'll open up with my question for those of y'all who are using payment instruments. Oh man, all kinds. So we've recently moved to payment instruments, and the transition was more difficult than originally anticipated. So I'm wondering if anybody has moved to or is using payment instruments and has found elegant solutions to either capturing the PN ref num for external credit cards. So these are credit cards you take like in an external portal, say directly in CyberSource, or for capturing the check number on a check that comes in, but also capturing the bank account for the check without having to pick the bank account every time. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then good for you. Well, I guess another question is, has anybody who's moved to payment instruments had any challenges that you've overcome in words of wisdom?
Well, Mike, this is Ryan again, and you've heard the challenge we haven't overcome is with payment instruments because we just recently moved. But we are capturing that PNREF number from an external source, and through an integration through the SOAP, we're bringing it in on a sales record and able to do that successfully.
Okay.
I'm happy to provide that field. I'd have to look up.
Yeah, it's more of the payment instrument type. And I think we're getting this right now, but I just I didn't know whether if you had any words of wisdom of like, oh yeah, we stumbled on that, use a payment method of blah and check this box or something like that.
Yeah, I would say that for handling mode, it's record external event.
Yeah.
And then, so we're bringing that in, and then we create that payment instrument if it doesn't exist, basically doing an upsert on a customer record first, so then we can reference it on a transaction.
Okay.
And I don't know if that helps you or not, but
Helps a little bit, yeah.
But yeah, happy to share anything with how we're doing that integration.
Cool. Anybody else have any questions, things you're struggling with that maybe we can help?
Yeah, I do. So we have a really complicated contract where, excuse me, the customer has reconciliation rights every 6 months. And so when we originally, this is a multi-year contract too. So we created separate sales orders for the 5 years of the contract. But then the quantity can flux every 6 months on those sales orders. So we had our first 6-month flux where the quantities changed, and in some cases the rates changed as well. And now the billing schedules won't recognize whenever we go to look at the billing schedule, it's not wanting to invoice correctly. And we have the billing schedule set up all custom to where we're invoicing to the new PO, and everything is set up with the right dates, the right amounts. But whenever you actually go to hit next bill, the amounts aren't correct. It's not flowing through the way we have the billing schedule set up. We have a support case out with NetSuite and with RSM to figure this out, but everyone's telling us that because the quantities have changed, now the billing schedules won't work. And I've tried just also creating brand new billing schedules on that sales order, and it's still not working. NetSuite came back and said their suggestion is to bill remaining and then make any changes from there. But the problem with that is that this is quarterly invoicing. And so if I bill remaining, I still have 3 other invoices that I need to issue. And then if I have to make any adjustments on the invoice, then that's going to affect revenue because now the invoice and the sales order are divorced. So just wondering if anybody had any suggestions on what we can do.
Gary, this is bringing back faint memories that we dealt with similar. I'm trying to remember what we we did ultimately solve it. We went to zone advanced billing, but I'm trying to remember what the issue was. Hopefully somebody else has seen the same thing. So you have a billing schedule that's custom. You have everything defined in the billing schedule, but when you click next bill on the sales order, what you're seeing shown up on that invoice does not match what the billing schedule says it should be. That's what
Correct.
you're seeing, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. This movie sounds familiar. And I do not remember what we came to as to why that. The only thing I could think of is I think it's like, you know, if you do a bill remaining, does the total remaining amount get billed correctly? It should. And another experiment, hopefully you have a sandbox, is to just next bill, next bill, next bill, all the way through to the end of the term, and see if those dollar amounts offer some clues. Like if there's some kind of proration going on, is my intuition. I'm trying to remember if that's what was going on with us.
Okay. Yeah, intuitively, it just seems wrong because, I mean, if you can change quantity and rate and it flows through correctly to your rev arrangements, it seems like billing schedule should be just a no-brainer. And if you're putting it all in custom, then it should all work, but it is not. So
yeah, I think my two suggestions would be, first would be just bill remain, you know, in sandbox, bill remaining a customer, make sure it is the actual remaining amount it should be.
yeah.
And then the next is just hit next bill and bill them all the way through with next bills and look at the invoices and try and piece together what NetSuite's actually doing. It's probably some kind of proration thing going on, is my guess.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
All right, we had two questions on the chat. Ashley, has anyone had issues issuing payments in NetSuite via their bank? We keep getting NACHA file errors. So I think two questions, which bank and which specific NetSuite module, I guess, we're using to create the NACHA files. Is this the Advanced Electronic Payments Direct Debit module?
Yes, it is. And it's Bank of America.
Okay.
We have a help desk ticket with Oracle, but they haven't been able to answer the question.
Yeah, so does anybody else have any answers to this? I can say we do use the direct debit at Vertafore with Wells Fargo successfully, but the NACHA files are largely standard, but cannot be standard depending on the bank. I would be surprised if Bank of America changed anything there. Also depends on what error you're getting.
It seems that they're changing a digit. It comes back, there's a different digit in the NACHA file.
That's hard, that's kind of hard to troubleshoot because there's a lot of digits in the NACHA file.
I know, I think it's the 8th digit. It's actually a problem we've been having for about 7 months. And they just brought me on to try to help them sort through this, but it's been quite difficult.
Yeah, so if you know it's down to the level of like the 8th digit in the first line or something like that, then depending on how technical you are, if you have tech people, the NACHA file format is openly available on the internet. So if you can basically look at the file format and go find that digit, it'll tell you like, oh, this is the format code or the blah, blah, blah code. And then you can go to Bank of America and say, hey, we're sending a 0 here and you're giving us an error. And then they could come back and say, oh, we only accept the values 1, 5, and 9.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful.
Good luck.
For what it's worth, Ashley, I'm working with somebody who's also having trouble with Bank of America transmissions. I think they have some issues there too. So
yeah,
I know that doesn't help, but you're not alone.
That makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Janet, did you answer?
Yeah, Janet's got answered down lower.
Okay, and then Casey. I think you answered Casey's question.
Casey's too.
All right, does anybody else have any open questions?
Yeah, actually, is my mic working okay? Sorry, I've had it off this whole time.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Matthew, and a newbie question here. First time with this user group here, and I appreciate everybody's time and effort into this. My company, or the company I work for, we're a very small company. You know, let's say up in the front office, we're 15 people ish, and about the same amount out back and our manufacturing side of things. And we're in the middle of the NetSuite implementation, and I would argue we've been in the middle for what feels like quite some time now. We're getting ready to flip the switch, and we're going from Sage 100. And I've been, since I've been with the company, I've been the Sage 100. I guess you'd call it a Sage 100 SME, not really an administrator, but the power user. And if we ever had any issues like, hey, this transaction isn't working right, or how do I deal with this, or if there's this bug or this error, I would try to tackle that problem first for them before bumping it up to our Sage rep or Sage help desk. So I'm looking to do the same thing for NetSuite. Not really be a NetSuite admin. I don't have the capacity for that, and we're not a big enough company to need a full-time NetSuite administrator. But more along the lines of becoming a NetSuite power user, are there some good courses that you guys can point me to help me to achieve that?
This is Margie here. And yes, if depending on your license, I know that some licenses come with like a free educational series. It may not be the in-depth one, but I know that I have a capability to get to, I'm an end user also, and I have the capability to see these educational seminars, not seminars, educational courses. There's some real high level ones that might help. Additionally, if you go on to Suite Answers, there's a lot of videos that like if there's a specific topic, they have a plethora of videos to help with the training too, sort of provide you education enough that maybe you can do some of these aspects of what you want to do as a power user instead of an administrator. So those are two areas that you might be able to go to. And additionally, I don't know, do you have support with NetSuite of any kind? I mean, you can always access Suite Answers, but do you also have support?
I'll have to look at the contractor license as you said, to get a better understanding of that, so I can answer that. But I mean, I know all of our questions so far have been directed to our implementation partner. So
well, actually, you can see it yourself. If you go to Suite Answers and you go to like contact support and you click on that, it'll tell you what kind of support you have. So you don't actually need to even look at your contract. So
okay.
Also, our website has a whole bunch of saved training that you can go to.
Oh, good point, Dana.
Yeah, just search on the RMNSUG.org website. It's free training that's out there.
Yeah, and we actually have a back to basics. It's Dana's done a couple times and I've done once. So those might be real helpful too.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the advice. Appreciate it.
All right, any other questions? Anything people are having issues with your NetSuite system you're trying to hack through that maybe somebody on the group can help?
I have a question. This is Margie. So if you want to inactivate or rename a standard, like if you go into items and you go into lists and you go to accounting and you go at items, there's some standard list reports like stock that come with NetSuite. And if you want to modify them, you can't. You actually have to customize and create a new one. But if you want to just use the same name and there's no way to modify that one itself because it came with NetSuite. If you want to inactivate one and it's got a negative sign before it, like in the Save Search, it's got like a -410. Is there any way to access that at all and inactivate it? Or are you just kind of stuck with it and you have to come up with a different name? Is there a way for it not to show in that list of drop downs? In other words, when you go to lists, counting items.
I don't see it there. I'm trying to figure out. I don't
see it
see
there.
any with negative internal IDs when I go look at an item list.
Well, no. It's actually when you go to, if you look in the URL at the top. So if you go to lists, accounting, items, And if you were like to pick basic, it doesn't show anything in the URL, but then you switch it to like purchase, and then you see search ID equal -402. Are you, something like that. And there's
So you're
one called
talking about
stock.
the view.
Yes.
And those are saved searches, and you're saying you can't get to those saved searches.
No, you cannot get to them. And if you want it not to show up, you kind of want to inactivate it instead of just adding more. I guess you just have to, I mean, all that I've figured out right now is you have to say like stock, use this one, kind of like current, but there's no way to make the other ones disappear. So you can see the URL, you have to change, but once you change it, you'll see it up there and it's got a negative number. So negative number to me means it's a NetSuite provided one.
Yep. So
it's just a little thing and it's just annoying, not like critical.
Yeah, I've never tried to change that.
Yeah, I haven't either, Margie.
Question.
I see what you're saying, but I don't know how to disable those native views.
Okay.
This is Suzanne. I have a question. I'm just wondering, when you do a sales order and an item fulfillment, and then you get to an invoice and an item has to be changed, is there any way to fix that, to go back and correct that without having to pretty much delete the transactions and start over in order to still have one invoice for the customer?
You say you have to change the item, like instead of one item, it's going to be a different.
We've already
they
fulfilled
put the
it,
wrong
though.
item on the sales order and the item fulfillment.
Which item did you end up fulfilling, though? That's the one that's the most important, right?
Right. So initially the whole transaction was done, but then when I was reviewing it, I noticed one of the items, so we have their medical devices, so they're different pins, and they picked the wrong pin, the wrong SKU. So they had to go back and do another item fulfillment, basically undo that. And I'm just wondering, is there any way to do it other than having to go back and really delete the invoice and delete the original item fulfillment?
If you go back to the original item fulfillment, can you uncheck a box? And that way it just sort of still shows as open. You can always close the line on the sales order and then you could add it on the invoice and it would still, remove it from
inventory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that would work. I mean, once it's already invoiced, it's like you have to delete the invoice, right? Though, to create a new one with everything on it.
Wait, you've
What
already
she's saying is
invoiced?
manually add the line to the invoice, take it off the fulfillment, and close the line on the sales order that was wrong, and then just put it directly onto the invoice.
But then I'm concerned that my inventory is gonna be wrong.
No, because your invoice will take it out of inventory, just like a fulfillment would.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you don't even need a sales order fulfillment. If you just went to an invoice and just started with that and picked your items, it would just pull them out of inventory.
Okay, maybe I'll try that in release preview to see. Okay, thanks.
Might have to add that to procure to pay. Oh no, that would be order to cash.
Order to cash, yeah.
Yeah, you
And
just
she
want to
brings
be
up a good
careful.
point. She's using
wanna
her
be-
release preview. So
Yeah, you just want to
as
be
a-
careful that if you're going to do that, if you're going to create a sales order and then you're going to do an invoice that's not related to the sales order, you're going to have to figure out how to close the sales order. Otherwise, you're going to have sales orders that are going to live out there forever.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
most
what
of
kind
the
what I was
sales
concerned
order will
about.
be on the invoice in this case, and then they'll close the line from the sales order, but the invoice is still attached to the sales order.
Yeah, and if they close the line item, it'll close the sales order.
Even if you don't ship that line item. So you just need to, you just need to have some hygiene around your sales order.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so Angela posted a question about part of ways for Paystand need to remove the Paystand button at the top. Cory, you replied, yeah, my initial thought there, Angela, was that buttons are usually added, especially if you're talking about a bundle, they're added by a script called a user event script typically. So I would go to, if you're talking about invoices, I'd go to page::scripted records, look at the invoice record, and they look in the user event subtab, and you should see scripts that seem to be Paystand related. So if you just disable those, or I think it's called deployed, like you uncheck deployed on them, you will probably find the magic one that puts the button on.
Sometimes those scripts are locked though for editing if they're deployed by a bundle. So that may not be possible.
Yeah, so then the question stands.
So
Uninstall the bundle if you can.
so where would I find that bundle again?
Under customization suite bundler.
Maybe you
and
can share
then-
your screen and just show her there.
But of course.
Yes. Picture says worth 1,000 words.
So customization, suite bundler, search and install bundles, and then click on list.
Okay.
And then search for, Paystand or whatever, or just look through your list of bundles. And then over on the left-hand side, you do this little drop down under the green guy, and then click on uninstall.
Okay. Let's see. So I just do like a Command F to find the one for Paystand.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest way.
I see it. Yeah.
You want to test in Sandbox first too.
Yeah, there's a possibility that it won't let you. Like if there's related records to transactions that happen that rely on data that's in the bundle, it may not let you uninstall it. So that's a possibility. But to Mike's point, uninstall it in
Talk
Sandbox
to
if you
the
can.
Suite app vendor, the vendor too. Ask them.
Yeah, they were rough to deal with.
And that's why you left them.
Yeah, yeah, not at all what they promised. But so trying to get them to uninstall it seems even worse. It does say this will delete the bundle and all its objects, custom records, forms, scripts, etc. from your account. Are you sure? So it will let me. I guess I don't have a Sandbox. So
You have a release preview?
Yeah, you should have a
yeah, I
release
do. I do.
Do it
actually.
there.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That
Oh,
is
that's
your
great.
Sandbox. You get one twice a year, and you usually get it for 2 to 3 months.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And recommend if you do have a release preview, you change the appearance and make it a different color so you don't actually think you're working in production.
Oh, that's a good
End
idea.
up think you're working in production and working in the release preview.
Got it. And if you change something in your release preview, it doesn't affect anything in your working files.
No.
Correct.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
So I think we're at time. So we're gonna have to call it. This was a great open forum and great information today. So thank you everybody for attending. Our meeting will be posted in about a week or so on our website. If you have any colleagues or if you want to review the information or anything that we've done in the past as well. So thank you all very much. Enjoy the last week of summer, and we'll see you all in November, hopefully. Have a great one.